Welcome to Red Pill Raw Truth. I'm your host, Matthew Horbury. Today we are lucky to be joined by two guests. First, let me welcome back to the show Mr. Andrew Red Pill Johnson, author of the book 911 Finding the Truth. Welcome back, Andrew.
Hi there, Matthew. How are you doing?
I'm very good. Glad to have you back.
Thanks.
Also, we are highly honoured to welcome to the show the most controversial figure in the 9/11 truth. Often wrongly ridiculed, slammed, scorned, ambushed, even threatened when she should be honoured with a Nobel Prize. She's the author of the book, Where Did the Towers Go? That has been called the most important book since the Bible. Welcome to the show, Dr. Judy Wood.
Well, thank you for having me. Let me take issue with the statement controversial.
Okay.
That sets up the psy-ops. What I present is not controversial.
Okay.
Yeah, facts are not controversial. Well, it might be controversial whether someone wants to look at the facts, but when people say something's controversial, that inserts doubt. That's part of the psychological operation.
Okay, I never said your information was controversial.
Right, but I'm controversial, but I'm a human. I don't think that.
Okay, sorry. I apologize.
But you see how that habit gets picked up. Somebody says something's controversial. I may be the most hated, but that's I'm not. It's not controversial if I'm a person. It's not controversial if I present evidence.
I think you're only hated until people have looked at your work, and then I think you win people over just by pure evidence.
So why am I referred to as controversial?
I just thought.
No, not by you, but it's a commonly used term.
It is.
I think it's, as I say, part of the psy-ops and that. I was reading something about, somebody sent me a message this week, and I was sort of diverting off a little bit from what we normally talk about, but it's psycholinguistics. It's how language is used to create implicit assumptions. And I'm trying to think of the example that was given. Yeah, it's a phrase, who rattled your cage? When somebody says to you, who rattled your cage? I don't know if it's such a common phrase in the US, but it's quite common in the UK, this phrase. And this is this idea of psycholinguistics, is when you hear that phrase used, quite regularly, it conjures up this impression that each person is in a cage, and they're happy because when this when you use this phrase, "who rattled your cage," it's like somebody is reacting in a way which is either extreme or it's inappropriate or whatever. And so in just those few simple words, you've encapsulated this idea of slavery, and that we should be happy with slavery by being in a cage.
And also doubt. Rattling your cage means that, you little thing are upset. Me who are accusing you of it, I'm fine. And you're the
Right.
low life who's upset.
And I think we each get kind of used to using these phrases, and that particular phrase, I must have said it probably, I don't know, at least 100 times, in my lifetime. And you just kind of pick these things up. And who thinks of these phrases? Sometimes we know, and sometimes we don't. But
in 2007, a certain person held a conference that they invited me to. The conference became entitled 9/11 Truth, what's controversial and what's not. Like, we're going to decide what's controversial and what's not. Meanwhile, somebody else is giving presentations, and their conference is entitled Lifting the Veil, Enlightenment. And think of the different connotation that gives.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Okay, let's get into the... Sorry, Matthew, carry on.
Okay, I was going to say, let's get into the evidence then. Let's explain what happened on 9/11, because it's the most important thing. What happened?
Oh, very much, very much. Because if you understand what happened, everything else falls into place. But if you don't know what happened, and there's, I realized there's three main reasons that people don't understand what happened. They don't know the truth, and they have trouble getting there. And that first thing is poor problem-solving skills. They don't understand you need to begin with what happened, not theorizing, speculating, hypothesizing, and imagining. And the second thing is groupthink. People don't want to be out, solo. And that's partly from, an animal instinct. Think of a field of deer grazing. One spooks and they all run, and only one of them knows why they're running. But they feel safer running with the herd. But once they're running with the herd, it's very easy for just one person to redirect that herd. And the third thing is they're terrified of the implications. They don't want that to be the truth, so they're going to find all sorts of excuses. Well, that person's controversial who's showing those facts, so we're going to ignore those facts. They're trying to, they're uncomfortable with themselves looking at the facts, so because they don't like what it says, and so they're, it's a subconscious kind of attempt to avoid that discomfort. But any one of those three things, and they don't get there.
Right. I think you're right. I was, when I was lost, when I first discovered that 9/11 wasn't quite as it seemed, as the mainstream media explained it, I was looking for some leader, and I found my false leaders. And you get led down the garden path.
I've got a question to ask you.
Okay.
Do you think those who planned 9/11, it was pretty serious planning, do you think they forgot to plan a cover-up?
I didn't even think about it, to be honest. Yeah, at the time when I was looking for answers, I didn't think about the cover-up. I just thought I'd found my answers. That's where, you get led down the garden path why the people are have cherry-picked the evidence to support their theory and said, right, there we go, that's what happened, and you go, look at what happened, and they put a nice slick documentary for you to watch that's too well made. Yeah.
There's a quote I read on the internet, and I'd forgotten where I found it, and I found it again. Mark Tokarski is the one who said it. He said, if you find yourself on the garden path, it's a good time to leave the garden.
Yeah, well...
breadcrumb trails are left out there to be found. I call it like an Easter egg hunt for a 3-year-old. The 3-year-old, the Easter eggs are right there out there in the middle of the path, and the 3-year-old thinks they've really discovered something. They hang on to it and treasure it. And there's Easter eggs that are just laid out there like breadcrumbs that steer you off into wild blue yonder.
Yep. Too easy to find. It was too easy to find. Okay, so where we start with the evidence? Should we start with what happened to the towers?
Well, that's an excellent place to start. That's another problem with the problem-solving skills. You need to start with what happened. A lot of people say this did it, that did it, that did it. Did what? What's it? You have to define what it is before you can say, thermite did it, bombs did it, bin Laden did it. What was it that got done? So once you define what it is, then it becomes clear what the occasion is. It's kind of like you have a dead body. Does it have bullet holes in it? Does it have poison in it? You do an autopsy to see what it was that got done, that killed the person. And so part of finding out what happened is determining the destructive mechanism. Did the buildings get beaten to death? Did a wrecking ball hit them? Did a missile hit them? Different damage happens from fires burning up a building versus something slamming into them. Slamming into them is kinetic energy, whether it's a missile, wrecking ball, big hammer, little hammer, lots of little tiny hammers. That's, something slamming into something. And if it's a gravity collapse, that would be kinetic energy destroying the building. One floor bashing into the next floor. And another type of destructive mechanism would be thermal energy. You heat the building up till it melts, or till it, if it's on fire, or till the steel softens and it gets too weak, and then kinetic energy kicks in. And another type of destructive mechanism that most people don't think of, I call it directed energy. Energy is directed, it's instructed to do something differently than it normally does. Kind of a no-touch-em thing. It's like that over there is being directed. Think of your TV remote control. It directs the TV to change channels without touching the TV. It's not using thermal energy. It's not using kinetic energy. It's using a different kind of signal that the TV picks up on. So I call that directed energy. And if it's used as a weapon, that's a directed energy weapon. It's a very large category. A lot of people say, she says it was ray beams from outer space, or laser beams from outer space. Well, the destructive mechanism that would be caused by laser beams would be thermal energy. And we can rule out thermal energy as a destructive mechanism if we look through all the evidence. And you don't, this is something, because this is my area of expertise, you let the evidence speak to you and tell what happened. As an analogy, I say it's like teaching a cat to walk on a leash, or getting a cat to walk on a leash. If you drag the cat, or you want the cat to go here where you're trying to tell it to go, it's not going to be very good for you or the cat. But if you let the cat go where it wants to go, then it'll walk on a leach. So
if you're looking to bring someone to justice, is it really important what happened? Because they obviously did it. Does it matter? Is it that important to get justice?
Okay, you're going to bring somebody to justice. What are you going to charge them with?
Well, the destruction of the World Trade Center.
Okay, what did they do that you're going to charge them with? You got to charge them with a crime. You got to figure out what the crime is you're going to charge them with.
So it is important then.
Right, because you can't take somebody to court based on, you just look guilty. I just think you're guilty because I feel it in my gut that you look suspicious, so we're going to charge you with something. You need to know what they did. It depends on what the crime is. And then you take them to court to prove that crime or to demonstrate that's what they did. Like, you don't say, well, you killed so-and-so. Oh, no, I don't have an autopsy report. I don't have a weapon. I just know you did it. I think that's going to get tossed out. And, of course, we have the, well-publicized Casey Anthony trial where the prosecution failed to solve the crime. They did not prove what happened to the child. How did the child die? Was it accidental poisoning? Was it drowning? Was it, chloroform? Did they beat the kid to death? That was not determined. It could have been, negligence. It could have been that they gave the kid, overdose of sleeping pills they didn't mean to, and that would be homicide, versus, deliberately planned to kill the kid. So that's homicide versus first-degree murder with the death penalty. Those are different crimes. Or the person is completely innocent, it's such a wide range. If you haven't proved the crime, you can't charge somebody with it legally.
Right. So if there's no evidence for thermite, you can't take someone to court and say you destroyed the building with thermite.
No. Remember, we have to start out with what happened, and part of that is the destructive mechanism. What is the destructive mechanism of thermite?
Well, we discussed this last week, didn't we? Me and Andrew, I think we put thermite to bed last week. But it's worth going over again. Is it thermal energy? Yeah, it is.
Or kinetic energy? If they claim it's explosive, which I don't think it is, but whichever they sometimes oscillate between saying it's an explosive and saying it puts out lots of heat. Well, the building wasn't burned up. It didn't melt, and it wasn't beaten to death. It didn't fail from kinetic energy or from thermal energy. So instead of picking on a specific item under the umbrella of kinetic energy or under the umbrella of thermal energy, that's what thermite would be one of those items. They haven't even determined that it's the destructive mechanism to say that's what did it.
Okay. And, so what evidence have we got then?
Well, there's also the issue of because they claim they found something in the dust,
right.
Some of the ingredients of it. And in my book, I talk about this, and I said, well, the building was turned to dust. That is one thing we do know. Most of the building was turned to dust. I'm not saying 100%, but the majority of it was turned to dust. And so, therefore, the dust would be expected to contain all traces of all materials that were in the building. So if you could find traces of chocolate, sugar, and nano-wheat, flour, in the dust, that wouldn't prove that chocolate chip cookies turned the buildings to dust. It wouldn't even prove that those ingredients had been combined as chocolate chip cookies in the building. Nor it proved they're even capable of turning the buildings to dust. And the same is true for thermite. Finding constituents of the building in the dust is not proof of what happened to the buildings.
Okay. I had a question actually on Facebook asking you about other things that were found in the dust that apparently that you never address.
Oh, it's that's another funny thing. People say don't address it, and look at the table of contents. But yeah, like what?
It was all them idioms, them radiums, and a big lot.
Right. There's this USGS dust study that I presented in that 2007 conference years ago. I also showed why it's unreliable data, and you don't cherry pick from unreliable data for one thing, because then you've got biased data samples. You don't know what you have. But so I'll get into what those ingredients are in a minute. But would you believe that none of those samples were taken from the WTC complex, ground zero? They're taken from outskirts. They did collect some samples under where the big dust cloud went up, where you expect stuff to be falling out of the sky, into the dust. But they didn't report the values for those samples. The only values they reported, the samples they reported the values for were from, over yonder, the very outskirts. Not even any of the streets where toasted cars were or bodies were, which is very interesting. So it was obviously a biased data collection. But let's look at some of those ingredients. Barium. Barium is the European Union has lowered the limit of acceptable amounts of barium that can be in children's toys. It is in the environment naturally. Okay, barium is a silvery white metal which exists in nature only in ores containing mixture of elements. It combines with other chemicals such as sulfur and carbon and oxygen and form barium compounds. Strontium. Strontium is a naturally occurring element found in rocks, soil, dust, coal, and oil. Naturally occurring strontium is not radioactive and is either referred to as stable strontium or strontium. Otherwise, it would be called radioactive strontium. So just plain strontium is not radioactive. Thorium is a naturally occurring radioactive substance. In the environment, thorium exists in combination with other minerals such as silica, and small amounts of thorium are present in all rocks, soil, water, plants, and animals. Uranium. Uranium is common, naturally occurring, and radioactive substance. It is a normal part of rocks, soil, air, and water, and it occurs in nature in the form of minerals, but it's never as a metal. Lithium. Lithium is a salt and occurs in nature. Chromium. This is the funniest one. I've heard them talk about chromium. You ever heard chrome bumpers on cars? When they make steel is mainly iron, like 97, 98, 99% iron, with other doodads added in, like chromium, nickel, or something else, because that enhances the structural properties as well as the environmental resistance properties of it. So chromium is a naturally occurring element found in rocks, animals, plants, soil, and volcanic dust and gases. Chromium is present in the environment in several different forms. In metal, chromium, which is the chromium 0 form, is used for making steel. And chromium 6 and chromium 3 are used for chrome plating, like bumpers, or dyes or pigments, leather tanning, and wood preservation. Tritium. Now, I have an extensive section in my book about the tritium levels. Now, for a nuke bomb, or many nuke bombs, big, little, in-between size, or mini, micro, nano nukes, the level of tritium would be sky high, approximately 900,000 times or 1,000,000 times background levels, at least, because that's what it is from leaky nuclear power plants. The water coming out of those, if they have a leak, you get those sky-high values of tritium, about 1,000,000 times background levels. The relatively low levels of tritium, approximately 50 times background levels, are actually the fingerprint of something else that's consistent with free energy technology that Stephen Jones played a large part in covering up in 1989. Now, 50 times background levels is high. It's definitely not just, sample error or, it's not a small amount. There's definitely an anomaly there. It's explaining something or showing something. It's indicative of something, but it's not indicative of nuclear fission.
So of all the things that we found in the dust, tritium's actually worth a look at?
Yes. And right. I do cover it in my book, even though I've been accused of not covering it by people who proudly say they have a copy of my book but haven't read it. Because that's plausible deniability.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, I didn't read that part.
Yeah, well, yeah, I was using it as a doorstop. I've got the book though.
Right.
Yeah. So the towers came to dust. They didn't slam to the ground. They didn't.
They didn't burn up and they didn't slam to the ground, but they mainly turned to dust in midair. And the three easiest ways to prove that or to demonstrate that to yourself is that if they'd slammed to the ground, you'd have a big pile of stuff left over.
Right.
A big pile of rubble. That didn't happen. If they slammed to the ground, they're built in the bathtub out in the Hudson River below the water table, about 70 feet, that's 7 times 10, 70 feet below the water table. And, the bathtub didn't get ruptured. I'm not saying it didn't get scratched up. It didn't get ruptured. If it had ruptured, it would have flooded all of the underground of Lower Manhattan because all the subways are connected to the bathtub. And that didn't happen. And if it slammed to the ground, some seismic chart somewhere would have recorded something consistent with the building that big slamming to the ground. Instead, the seismic charts were picking up things all afternoon of, rock quarry blasts, and even an earthquake in Alaska. There was a spike that happened with each of the demise of the towers 1 and 2. Not with Building 7, but with 1 and 2, that were way lower than what you expect, and they calculate the magnitude of an earthquake based on the surface wave, and that was the only thing that was out of calm. There was no detectable S or P wave. But both of those waves travel through the Earth. They travel differently, and they arrive at the seismic station with lag time between them. The P arrives first, then the S wave, the pulse, and the shear wave. And based on that, the difference in the arrival time, and they know what the substrate is underground, they can tell you about how far away the epicenter is. And if you have a lot of different seismic stations, and you know that distance, you can pinpoint where the epicenter is of the earthquake. But with the demise of all of the buildings, all of the events on 9/11, there was no detectable S wave or P wave at any of the recording stations, and then even some of the recording stations couldn't detect even a surface wave.
Right, so we've got 3 major key pieces of evidence. So shall we just look at them one by one? So no rubble.
Very little rubble. No rubble. Yeah. Very little rubble.
Okay, we've got the chat. If we've got the chat window, I can paste pictures into there so people in the group can actually see certain pictures. So I've just posted a picture into chat. I don't know if you're in the chat room now that you can see. I've just posted the picture with the ambulance.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So anybody who's in the chat room now, they should be able to click on or look at that. It's not opening though. For some strange.
Or you can send it to the WTC page because we can go up and down. That's only one page to load, and so we can go up and down that page.
Yeah, okay.
drjudywood.com/WTC. And in figure 8 is the ambulance picture. And
right, yeah.
If you click on those pictures, they'll open up in a new window in a large picture. But the ambulance is, backed up in front of, the front door of Tower 1. I don't know how close to it. It was, a little bit of a distance there. But you see the ambulance sitting there. It doesn't look clobbered. Maybe the door is a little bit ajar, but there's no clobber marks on it, no big piece of steel on it. And you see some of the outer columns, a photographer referred to them as wheat checks, and I think that's a good term for the prefab units of 3 columns wide by 3 stories tall that they bolted together. They fabricated them at the factory, and then they trucked them in and put them together. So you see some of those wheat checks sticking up, and you don't see them sticking up much above the building adjacent to it, which is Building 6. An 8-story building.
For everybody who's in the UK, wheat checks are shreddies, by the way. just to clarify that.
Okay. Yep. All right.
Okay, carry on.
And so, but you see, the north wall on the left and the south wall on the right, the remains of it. And if it's no taller than the 8-story building, where the other, and it was a 110-story building above ground, where the other 102 stories of outer walls, much less all the guts of the building. You see a little tiny pile there, something back in the middle. That's stairwell B, where there were 14 people who survived there. First they thought they were goners because they thought they're under 106 stories of rubble. Because it was all black. Well, it turns out the dust went up and blocked out the sun. But as soon as that dust cleared, they looked up and saw blue sky and then walked out on their own steam. They were able to walk out under their own power after having 106 stories above them go away. I'm not going to say collapse because that would be kinetic energy, smashing them. They didn't get cooked to death. So it wasn't thermal energy heating up the building.
Right. So we've got more pictures that we can show of the rubble, though. So that's just one picture. There's more in the
Figure 7 from that same page.
7. Yeah, I think this is the one me and Andrew looked at last week.
It's the one where you were seeing all the lather pouring out of Building 7 in the distance, but you don't see any Tower 1 and 2. Earlier that day, you wouldn't be able to see Building 7 because you'd have a 110-story building in your, blocking your field of view.
Yeah.
And it's not there. And this is like ground level because you can also look and see the pedestrian walkway, which is equal to the second story, and cars can drive.
So which is Building 7 in that image?
And Figure 7. You see the building in the distance with all the fumes pouring out of it. I won't call them smoke because your brain is going to be biased to thinking that fire is the cause. I'm just calling it generically fumes or lather.
Okay, so when it's center of the picture, we can just see one side of it.
Right, the south side of it. The building to the left of that you can't see anything pouring out of, that's the Verizon building.
Right.
But the Building 7 is a 47-story building. It's just got one wall of stuff pouring out of it.
Yep. And how tall is the Horizon building?
I don't know, but it's not as tall as the 47-story WTC 7.
Okay, I was trying to just measure up the piles of debris.
Figure 10 is even better. That's a closer up view. You can see the 8-story building. It looks like it goes up maybe a third the way up the big part of the Verizon building.
Okay.
But you can see it's just, heavy. It's such heavy, whatever it is, particulate coming out of the building that I call it lather, like, shaving lather that you spray out of a can that just comes out solid. It looks like, it's one side only at that point. Just the south face it's pouring out of. An hour before Building 7's demise, it starts coming out of the east face. But at that point in time, it was coming out of, from ground to roof, from side to side, the entire face, but not around the edges, not the faces adjacent to it, which is mighty peculiar.
Did buildings 1 and 2 do this?
Oh, that's an assumption. We're looking at evidence.
Yeah, no. Is there evidence of Building 1? Just
no, there's an evidence that this is what Building 7 is doing. Building 7 is obviously still standing, and it's got this stuff pouring out of it. We haven't determined what happened to it yet. So we're just.
No, I think Matthew was asking if there was a similar set of sequence of events that went on with Towers 1 and 2. In other words, were they producing this sort of display that Building 7 did?
Yes, but it was over a shorter amount of time, and it we'll get to those ones in a minute. Where there's this piece of the steel falling, and they're trailing this lather kind of stuff.
Okay, so we're just looking at the rubble now then.
Okay.
Yeah, carry on with the rubble then. Sorry.
Thanks. It's so what. What else would you like? This was the lack of rubble that we were talking about, and I think that's definitely established with these pictures. You can see that, that 8-story north facade of Tower 1, but, where's the rest of the building? And you're at
I think I've got actually, I put a picture in last week where it's like where you've drawn on the picture to show you a comparison. Let me just post that into the chat window, and then.
Okay, you see the little pile of stuff there compared to the total height of the building. That's a big difference.
Matthew, that's the image. When Dr. Woods is done proving 9/11, you need to get her on the Boston bombing and Sandy Hook, because there's lots of evidence there.
I'll let you take that, Dr. Judy Wood.
Yeah, well, one thing at a time. That's a very, very, very important thing to learn. To have discipline of determining what happened here instead of, here's one detail, and I'm just going to jump to this answer because I need an answer so I can move on. Because then you end up assuming the problem you're solving, and that is a major, major key for how to run a cover-up. Because in order to figure out what happened and solve a crime, you have to first establish what happened, and after that, step number 2 is how it happened. But through solving what happened, you can figure out how it happened, and then from there, who did it, why they did it, and whatever. But these other things, you can't solve the crime until you know what the crime was, and onward. Now, if you're going to run a cover-up, what you do is get people to assume what happened and go after who did it or how it was done. It was done with bombs. It was done with thermite. It was done with airplanes. It was done with bin Laden. And if you're saying, bin Laden did it, and you haven't established what it is, in order to say bin Laden did it, you're assuming what happened. So you're only solving an assumed problem. You're solving an imaginary problem, not a real problem. That is a big key. And that's why people argue back and forth, round and round and round, because they each have assumed a different problem. But long as you're solving...
Until we've established exactly what happened, there could be no prosecution of anybody, even if you could prove who did it.
Yes, correct. Because if you're busy solving an assumed problem or a theoretical problem, you have a theory that you're working on, you can never, ever, ever solve the real problem. You have to let go of theories and look at what happened in order to determine what the crime was. And that is a very major cover-up, because how fast we were told bin Laden did it, or it was done with, and it was never an investigation. It was just like, here's the answer, and people like a quick answer. And if you don't like that answer, if you don't like the lie behind door number 1, we'll show you the lie behind door number 2, or the lie behind door number 3. Just keep you occupied looking at the answer. Here's another answer. Here's another answer. So you don't turn around on your own and look at the wide open field of evidence right behind you and solve the real problem.
There is a lot of evidence for 9/11.
Yes. There's enough evidence with these other things too, but if you start jumping, hopscotching on a whole lot of different things, you have nothing, because you don't know what's what. And also,
right? Because what are you gonna charge the offenders with? Kids they didn't really kill. You're gonna charge them for using crisis actors for defrauding the public.
But see, you're making assumptions and then asking
Right. In other words, I totally get what Judy's saying. She's saying, you got to first establish what happened before you can go after them.
And not assume. Not assume there were kids killed or there weren't kids killed or whatever you're making the assumptions of and want to go get somebody. And that is a very big point there. It's a very, very basic animal instinct. Think of dog fights or chicken fights. Especially dog fights. How come they fight to the death? Because when people are in revenge mode, or animals are in revenge mode, they shut off logical thinking. So if you can get humans in revenge mode, you can put anything over on them. Plus, if they're traumatized, trauma-based mind control. So what this hit me on 9/11.
Fight or flight.
This isn't endangering your life. This is like revenge. I went into campus after I saw what was going on at home. Came into campus and these 2 faculty members there, and they were saying, well, after the cold bombing and this and that. They were believing the bin Laden story. We gotta go take them out. We gotta take them all out. So mentally,
that's on the day.
On that day.
On that day, and they just seen the buildings turn to dust, and believe they collapsed because that's what they're told. And so they already mentally in their hand had their pitchfork and need to go after the bad guy. Need to go after somebody. Need revenge. Need to go get somebody. And that is what shuts down logical thinking, and people quit thinking. And you can put anything over on them. Isn't that a slick tactic?
Think about that.
Yeah.
So okay, they don't like the Bin Laden story. We'll give them that George Bush did or Dick Cheney did it. It's the same thing. You just substitute one for the other, and they're still in revenge mode. Need to go get somebody, and they're not.
Although
thinking.
I do think Boston bombings and Sandy Hook and all the other things are quite interesting. They didn't change the world like 9/11 did. I think 9/11 is the biggest event of the century. So,
the other things that are distracting, if you start mixing things up and making judgment, you can't say what anything is until you solve it. But we do know that 9/11 was a pretty big deal, and we know that it affected the entire planet.
Killing the President of the United States in open view like that is pretty big also.
But think about this trauma. This 9/11 traumatized the whole world. They saw this building coming apart in the dust, and like the sky was falling.
President Kennedy's head exploding was a trauma for my mom.
Right,
when she was pregnant
but you had to have a TV set to see that. Now,
you were there in Dealey Plaza, you know.
Right.
One of the other things I was going to say is that if you can encourage people to make assumptions, then whether that's done by putting things on the mainstream TV or, phrasing things a certain way, whether you do that on mainstream TV or within the, what might be called the alternative knowledge community or the conspiracy community, whatever name you want to give it, once you can get people to make assumptions, then you can get the cover-up going. You can get the cover-up going. The more that you can encourage people to make assumptions and the more that they don't realise they're doing it, the more effective the cover-up will be. Because I, for example, posted a short comment on Facebook just on this very topic. I assumed that the people who were giving out the thermite story for 9/11 were trustworthy. And it took me a long time, because I assumed they were trustworthy because they were disagreeing openly with the official story. So I assumed that they were actually telling the truth. And it took me a long time, a fair amount of time to work out that wasn't the case. So in other words, I'd made an assumption, which I've then had to do quite a lot of work to work out that assumption wasn't true. And there was a certain amount of pride that I had to swallow within myself to say, I was wrong, I misjudged this, and I've got to relook at it again. I've got the evidence again, and go back, tear up a few sheets of paper or whatever.
Yeah, Matthew. Again. Yeah, Andrew, I made the same mistake. Dr. Woods,
right,
I saw you, Dr. Woods. I heard you on
Dr. Wood.
I heard you on Bob.
It's a four-letter. My last name's a four-letter word.
Yeah.
Okay.
I heard you on Dr. Wood. Yeah. I heard you on Bob Tuscan's show about 3 or 4 years ago, and I was in the chat room watching 50 people tear you to shreds because it was controlled demolition and thermite, and
you also know this is really,
I was there. Not only did they tear you to shreds, but they ripped Bob Tuscan apart and said he works for the Mossad and you're just controlled opposition and you're throwing up. Yeah, and I apologize for what they did to you.
I'm delighted to talk to you right now because they
were wrong, but everybody
no, there's something more important. I would like you to ask you. See, I've never talked with you before. I don't know what your answer is going to be, but I saw the chat room that day. I saw the people in the chat room were ticked off because he wasn't allowing callers. Do you remember that?
No,
he wasn't accepting callers, and the people in the chat room were ticked off because of that.
Right, and he also, then it turned to like, okay, you are with Mossad because, Bob's Jewish, from a Jewish family, right? But the poor guy is taking a ton of hits, right? No, he's a friend of mine. I love him, So then they started accusing him of that. There was trolls everywhere, and they were painting you as you were just throwing this half-baked theory up to lead us away from the truth. And I'm seeing now that what you had is likely really truth, and the other stuff was based on what it appered to be. So
people were conditioned. It's this conditioning that goes on with people. But what I just got excited about is that you're somebody who can validate this, that the people in the chat room were ticked off that they couldn't call in because they wanted to rip me to shreds. They wanted to call in, but he wasn't accepting callers that day. And then guess what? They connected somebody by Skype, and they called it a caller. Do you remember that, Fetzer? Jim Fetzer?
Yeah, I know Jim Fetzer.
Well. Yeah, that was connected by Skype.
We've had him on many times. Dr. Jim Fetzer, Professor Fetzer.
Yeah. He was connected by Skype, and then I was disconnected from the show. And they'd reconnect it, and they claimed I was too terrified or upset or whatever to answer. No, I wasn't connected through Skype. And then it was like, I think 3 different disconnections. But they had Fetzer connected through Skype, and they pretended it was a phone call.
If we go down, I'll be back. Because they do that to us all the time. They did it to us just as we were about to start the show.
Yeah. Anyway, that was just an interesting event there. But it was definitely a pre-planned event too, because you don't have somebody on Skype, spur of the moment.
Rick, over the last 2 days, I've spent over 24 hours talking to Dr. Judy Wood, and some of the stuff she's told me on phone, you're going to be, it's going to blow your mind when you hear about some of these people and what they've been up to. Andrew Johnson's going to be a key to revealing half of this. It's going to, honestly, it's, I
think to summarise what you're saying, Matthew, I just say to people, what I'm going to tell you, me, Andrew Johnson, what I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to tell you now, but if I was to lay out the whole story, even a conspiracy theorist wouldn't believe it. It might sound like a very cliched way of saying it, but that's kind of how I expressed it, badly or well.
I was just pointing out that
the cover-up is so huge.
And that people don't realize they're participating in it. But what I was taking the opportunity is to respond to this particular event, because I've never had that opportunity, that this was not a caller calling in. It was a prearranged Skype connection, and the people in the chat room were ticked off that
I was wrong.
Tusky wasn't accepting calls that day, but the people in the chat room were ticked off and wanted to call in, and
Well, you know what? You never know who controlled opposition is in this game anymore.
Right.
Oh, we do, mate. We do.
But in the chat room, why were those people lathered up to attack me? There's something that prepared them with that mindset. Maybe it went back 6 months or a year or whatever, but people are conditioned to attack me and string me limb to limb. They were conditioned to that.
Called Project Mockingbird. And what they
wasn't anything I was saying.
They are people who are trained to go from network to network, work with fake hosts who are working for the CIA, FBI, or secret societies.
There's other people.
They're there to discredit the real hosts out there. Yes,
but we don't need to go beyond what we see. I just was relaying my own experience of that day. But there's quite a few of these. But anyway, instead of looking at the evidence, these people are conditioned to chase their tails around and run with beliefs and opinions and whatever, and beliefs that there's something with my character. There was another thing that came up in the past day or so that Andrew, I guess, shared with me this morning, that some folks are wanting more personal information about me, like they never know who you're dealing with. Well, it doesn't matter, what color underwear I'm wearing as to the evidence. The evidence is the evidence. It's independent of me. These aren't claims I'm making. I'm showing evidence. Evidence stands by itself.
I think what the best thing to do is to go through all the evidence so there's no doubt in anybody's mind what happened.
Yes, they have to see it.
Yeah, every single nuance of it. So if there's any video clips that help the evidence to get it in people's minds, or any photographs, which we just present everything, and then we can explain exactly about the court case.
I'm the little kid who says, looky, the emperor didn't have any clothes on. Where everyone else, was afraid to say so, and I'm just pointing, because I haven't been conditioned to say, oh yeah, his clothes are lovely. I'm just saying, looky, I'm just pointing at. Look, it's right.
I think also, I may just say at this point, if obviously we're sort of diverging in different directions a little bit, and if people do want to go and look at the evidence, then one of the newer presentations that Dr. Wood did is the so-called BEM presentation, which is actually at the top of the homepage of drjudywood.com. It's, I think, 2 hours, 22 minutes, an auspicious amount of time. And if people can't follow because we're obviously diverging directions, and Rick has got stuff to say, and I've said stuff, and Matthew said stuff, so it can get a little bit confusing. So we obviously, Matthew and Dr. Judy will go through the evidence as well here, but if you look for the BEM, that's BEM presentation, you can Google for that.
Breakthrough energy movement.
Yeah, breakthrough energy movement, and you can always go back to that after we finish this, and that, I think that's a pretty good sort of compact sort of walkthrough, isn't it?
Yep. I start out in that presentation saying, okay, is the answer 27 or is it 19? Or, am I right if I say the answer is 27? If I ask, who's the Rick? Rick, is the answer 27? Am I correct?
Ask one more time. I was saying something to Annie.
Oh, if I tell you the answer is 27, am I correct?
Well, ask the question again, because I missed it. I was talking.
Bingo! Touchdown! You're a winner. You win. You win. See, you have to know what the question is before you know if the answer is correct.
Oh, okay. You were tricking me.
Right. So if you say if someone says it was thermite, it was nukes, it was this, what was it? You have to define the problem before you can solve it.
I was saying in the chat room when the show started, I said, I know exactly what she's saying, because when I was a kid, I used to play that game Clue. So to win the game, you have to be able to say, Colonel Mustard did it with the candelabra in the study. You have to have the crime scene, the weapon, and the person who did it, and
how they did it.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
Bingo. So if you say this is the answer, well, we don't know if it's right or wrong unless you know what the problem is. And actually, in teaching engineering classes, the very first rigorous engineering classes, students learn that very thing. It's run kind of like boot camp. And once you get into the habit of first defining the problem, listing what you've been given, the information you've been given, and then draw a line across the page, write what you're looking for, what answer you're looking for, draw another line across the page, and then start solving it and annotate it. Once you get into that habit, no matter how simple the problem is, it just solves itself. Otherwise, you're going around in circles trying to figure out how to get the answer.
Oh, I totally agree with you. In fact, one of my favorite documentaries that we play on the network, and he's going to be a guest, is from Trey Smith from a website called God in a Nutshell. And this guy will take something like his latest movie is about Noah's Ark. And he goes back, looks at the Bible, looks at the evidence, and points out stuff that literally proves Noah's Ark where it is, that it really happened about the time it happened, and that there was a flood. And, that doesn't necessarily prove God, but to me it does, because I already know there is a God from spiritual stuff, but it confirms it. In other words, he went about making a documentary about showing that there is biblical history in the Bible and Noah's Ark is real, and took 3 hours to present the case. And at the end of it, your jaw drops. He's done the same thing with the Nephilim,
You talk about exactly. You talk about the game Clue, and I think that's great. We need to bring that kind of education back to people, because now they're taught to, as fast as you can, answer the standardized multiple choice test, and just if you can guess at the dots, to color in. It isn't a test of knowledge.
And the real answer is none of the above, because nothing is what it appears to be these days.
But also, in doing this, people lose the ability to solve problems. And in solving problems, you first have to define the problem before you can solve it. And they don't define the problem.
I think also, if I can make an analogy, we call the game in the UK Cluedo, not Clue. But what Dr. Wood essentially found out was that, the way that Cluedo works, or the Clue game works, is you have a pack of cards, one for the person and one for the room, and then you take out one from each of those categories and you put it in a secret envelope and put that in the center of the board so that no one knows what it is. And then you have to deduce, by going through all the other cards, which of those 3 are in the envelope. So it's a process of elimination that you have to deduce which is the right card. But essentially what Dr. Wood had found was that the cards that were in that envelope came from a completely different pack, from a completely different box game, which you would never have been able to find out unless you'd actually been through all the evidence and ruled out all of the normal cards, which you knew wouldn't be in a normal set, and then you eventually worked out that the card must have come from a different set.
It's like so if you're playing...
That's what we're dealing with in this.
Yeah, if you're sitting at a table playing poker with people, and you're observant and you can remember, and you're saying to yourself, wait a second, how can they have 4 aces when I already saw 2 of them go down? Somebody's cheating.
Or this the other
Somebody's
thing about
cheating, right?
That,
you know what I'm
magic
saying?
tricks. Or like magic tricks. It's this whole thing about getting the audience to assume the wrong problem. You can't lie to them because they'd catch up with you. So you get them to do the lying to themselves by assuming the wrong problem. And an example I've seen is you cut the cards in half, and then say all right, draw this card, and you hand it out to the person in the front row, and they pull the card off the deck. Okay, and then you turn around and you say, show it to the whole audience. Make sure I don't see it. Okay, now slip it back in the deck, someplace where you'll be sure I won't see it. Slip it back in, and then the magician then starts shuffling the cards and distracts people with how he's shuffling the cards, and then he goes, oh, here it is, looky here, and he pulls out, the ace of spades. But people were assuming it was because he got people to focus on where he stuck it back in the deck. No, he already knew what card the guy in the first row was going to draw. He already arranged that. But you get people to assume the problem is in how the card was stuck back in the deck. They forget to realize that card was already selected.
Right,
it was already identified.
I've trained myself as a magician since I was 12, right? So what she's saying here is a magician has an ability. He's got many methods of doing this. Of giving
be careful though with that
card.
Magic stuff, Matthew. It opens up portholes. Illusion is cool. Stay away from magic.
Yeah, okay, conjuring. I've been messing about with card tricks. I could blow your mind with a pack of cards. But what I mean is, if I wanted to give you the 3 of spades, but make it look like you had a free choice, so you can have any one of these 52 cards. Here, pick one. You've got 3 of spades. I don't need to know where you put that card in pack, because I can reveal that 3 of spades anywhere I want. I can reveal it inside my shoe, because I've got a duplicate 3 of spades sat there waiting for me. I could reveal it on top of a mountain 50 miles away. It don't matter.
I've got this trick that people fall for all the time. Right.
I'm going to reveal something now.
Yeah.
I'm going to reveal a big trick. Right. This is when we see on TV. I'm going to destroy some magic right now. When we're on TV and we see a chosen card signed appear somewhere, impossible. This is how it's done. I will walk up to a spectator and say, right, we're going to film in a minute. Right, what I want you to do is I want you to pick a card and I want you to sign your name. Right, let's just practice. Right, you pick a card now. Right, then they pick a card and then I'm going to put it on face at deck. Right, and then they're going to say, right. They're going to sign the card. I'm going to say, just sign it there. So I'm going to watch them sign their card. Right. Now I've got their card signed. I'll say, oh, that's perfect, mate. I'll just rip that up because we're not going to need it. I'll switch the card without them knowing, and they look like I've just ripped their card up. I've now got their card signed. I'll then hand that off to an accomplice, one of my cameramen or one of my people who are there helping me. Right. I'm now set up. Right. It's time to roll. Action. I'll walk up to them and say, right, pick a card. Right, they will pick the same card that they've just signed, because I'm going to make sure they do. And then they're going to sign the card like they did. And then I'm going to do anything I want to reveal that card, and that my accomplice is going to walk off, and maybe he's going to put it somewhere behind a window or something like this. Hello, card behind a window. Yeah. Right, so now we've got a signed card behind a window. And I'll then...
Yeah, you could switch the deck so that every card they pick is a 3 of spades.
Yeah, I could do that, but a magician's got the ability to just give you any card he wants anyway.
The point is that they were thinking that the trick was being pulled elsewhere, not up front, not initially.
That's right.
And so
the trick that I want to use as an example really quick, right, is they're assuming something else. Like, I'll take a cigarette, and in front of people in a club, I'll take a cigarette out of a pack, and I'll pretend to be holding it in my hand, so up in front of them. And I'll move my other hand in front of the hand and go 1, 2, 3, and then open both of my hands, and the cigarette just disappeared. Now, people are like, how did you do that? And what they don't realize is if you're standing behind me, you'll see that I wet the back of my thumb. The cigarette is hidden behind my thumb. I didn't make the cigarette disappear.
There's various tricks in one, but the basic idea
logical.
is... the basic idea is you get the audience to assume the wrong problem. So they're solving an assumed, an imaginary problem, not the real problem. And that's why you need to determine first what happened. What exactly is going on here before you jump to the answer.
What's the magic trick?
Yeah, see, because the quote magician is not lying to you. You're lying to yourself, but the situation is set up to lead you to make the wrong assumption about what the problem was.
Absolutely.
Now getting back to this, did you put that link in the chat room? Was there a link that
I put a video. I put a link in the chat room. The last picture I posted into the chat room was going back to 9/11.
This is a YouTube video.
I posted the
Pasted in the chat window, Matthew, the shared chat window.
The video I just gave you the link to in the Okay.
Oh, in Skype.
Yep. In Skype, I gave you the link.
Okay, I've got it.
Okay, and that video is a slow motion video of building 1 coming apart. See, if we say collapse, we're assuming the problem. No, it came apart. Or it went away, or use a different term. That's why I use Cheetos and fuzzballs and that type of thing. It is actually much more scientific because it blinds you from biases. Using a different language. So here the building's coming apart and we're looking at it. So if you look at the beginning of it, you'll see in slow motion, you'll see the northwest corner of Tower 1. You see that white edge of the corner of the building. And pretty soon you'll notice a long, straight piece emerge.
Central in it.
One of the steel
central
columns.
Of the film.
Yeah, and it starts appearing, and let's see, I'm at 25 seconds, and here it is, 27, 28, 29. At 30 seconds, you definitely see it clearly, this straight piece of material. We're not going to assume if it's aluminum cladding or if it's steel or whatever it is, but we see it trailing dust. That's a lot of dust is trailing, and you keep watching it. Right now I'm at about 45 seconds, and you don't see it anymore. Are you telling me that dust caught up and passed that piece, the solid material? No, dust has much, much more surface area per mass, and it's going to be much slower to fall. What that shows is that piece completely turned to dust, and there wasn't anything left of the chunk.
Yeah, and you can focus on any piece of this building.
And then you start realizing that everything else is doing it too. That was just easy to direct people to, but you start looking at all the other stuff, and you realize everything's kind of turning to dust as it falls. And it doesn't really reach the base. Now back on that AHA page, and there's some not slow motion but fast versions of that. And you can see things turning dust as they come down. But if you look at Figure 3 or Figure 4, Figure 3 is a good one. I call that the twilight zone. And you might want to
Figure 3.
Yeah,
I'll do it now. I'll copy it in.
Okay, I'll there's that's linked just to make sure I look at the same one. I call this the twilight zone because these people, when the building was coming apart, ran for cover. Now they just come out of their hiding places and they look like their body language look like they think they just walked into the twilight zone. And actually they did. That's the intersection where that piece was falling towards. And they come out of their hiding places. Like, where's the building? You see, Holden clouds up there, and you see blue sky. It's, and there's a guy there with his arms folded, just kind of looking, and another guy closer up to that's building 6 in the foreground, with his hands on his hips. And I'll bet you their jaws hanging open. They're like, what the heck just happened? Where'd the building go? You see some aluminum cladding. The building was a steel structure with aluminum cladding covering the outer steel columns. And you see those, pieces of aluminum cladding around there on the ground, just a few. Now, there are some steel wheat checks further down, but not nearly enough, not 110 stories worth. So you look at the guy, close to us, not the Mr. Branford there, but the one with the backpack and the white shirt. He's got his hands at the side. It's like, huh? And then there's another one trying to make a cell phone call, and but you don't see fire, but you see a lot of unburned paper. One of the things that we heard people repeat over and over again, the military has top grade thermite, special nanothermite. Well, you know what the military uses thermite for? One of the things they use it for, other than to melt gun barrels, they use it to burn paper. If they have top secret documents and here the enemy's coming to take over their camp, they don't want their enemy getting that top secret document, so they have a grenade of thermite that it just burns everything up because it burns so fast. This paper isn't burned.
Yep, and it's papers everywhere.
And
there isn't anything, any thermite or nukes that would leave paper alone.
And immediately the media, like on that day and into the next day, were reporting what they saw. That was before, it isn't that somebody tells somebody and orders somebody to do something. It's that various suggestions, like the people in that chat room on Bob Tuskin's show, something had directed them to, dish out all this anger and attack me. It wasn't something I said. So it's something that can condition them. So, that kicks in a couple of days after the event of 9/11, where, people are somehow directed because of hearsay of, bin Laden, and so people, we gotta go get some, they're not thinking clearly anymore. But the very first reports are generally the best somebody can do at that moment. And, I'm gonna, play the audio for this one's one of my favorite ones here. George Stephanopoulos at the scene with Peter Jennings in the studio. This is almost, or just a little over 24 hours later. This is 12:44 p.m. on 9/12. And let's see.
A little earlier, we raised this question, which was actually raised by ABC's Jackie Judd, as we look at these areas down below, and the video of where the towers used to stand and where is all the rubble gone. And have you been able to, is there any way you can answer that question?
I'm sorry, Peter, I didn't get the question.
Okay, I apologize. Jackie Judd and several other people can keep asking us, when you look at where the towers used to stand, there is surprisingly so little rubble. Where did all the rubble go?
It's a very good question, Peter, and I have asked some people who've been doing some of the rescue and recovery work this morning. If you look behind me, you can see the very remains, the skeletal remains of the World Trade Center. And one volunteer, Robert Gerlinski, explained to me the reason there's so little rubble is that all of it simply fell down into the ground and was pulverized, evaporated.
No, go ahead and stop it there. And here's George Stephanopoulos. He's at the scene. He's a reporter. He's supposed to be telling the world what's happening there. And that's the best he can do. He's not trying to make a fool of himself. You have to feel for him. That's the best he can do. He kept apparently asking people until this volunteer gave this line, and okay, once somebody's given an answer, they...
No. George Stephanopoulos worked for Bill Clinton. He's a card-carrying Illuminati witch.
That's an assumption. Yeah. Now, that would be contrary to covering this up. He's pointing out that there's no little rubble in the building evaporated, vaporized, or whatever this is before people are...
I get your point. I'm just saying he wouldn't have been a high-level advisor to Clinton if he wasn't in on it.
I think very few people are in on it, and so that you have an organic reaction.
That's the point. He wouldn't, if they wouldn't use the cover-up story that the building evaporated. It's not a good enough cover-up story. It's not. If he'd have been fed a line, that wouldn't have been the line he'd been fed. If he's a... I struggle with media. I'm really having a bad time with media, where my head is on media is. But he's got to be on the scene, and he's saying the building evaporated. It's ridiculous. That's a line that couldn't have fed anybody.
He would just totally discredit himself if anyone really listened to that. The building fell down, the ground was pulverized and evaporated.
The people who are in charge can do better than that.
Yeah, but it's not going to be believable if it's too scripted.
Sometimes the people in charge will tell you the truth, bigger, and you'll never believe that. So let's just tell them. Let's make this conspiracy.
That's an assumption. That's an assumption you're making. Here, let's look back. What is the evidence we're seeing? We're seeing that there's not enough debris there, and here's somebody who actually agreed with that. But by the end of the week, they're talking about piles.
Many times
they're talking about, but
they'll put out the truth first, but they'll put it out in a way that's unbelievable, like Sandy Hook of Boston.
No, they don't.
So even if you figure it out, you look like you're nuts, is what I'm saying.
No. This gets forgotten real quickly. That's what they're banking on. But initially, because you can't have everybody in the world in on it, you need an organic response that seems like, and there's evidence that these responses we saw in the various media are just traumatized by it. They don't know. This building collapsed, that building collapsed, the next building's going to collapse, and they panic because they really don't know what's going on. And think about it, you have this top secret, the biggest psy-ops on the planet that we ever known of. Huge psy-ops. Are you going to just leak it out?
It's the worst psy-op. It's the biggest.
Right.
When you get to the end of this, you're going to be blocked. Honestly,
let me
clarify. You've seen nothing yet.
Yeah, I just want to clarify what I'm the trick that is used sometimes. If you put out a truth, but you do it in such a way, I
understand, but this was not ever played again. We didn't hear. We started hearing about rubble pile. Somebody's working on the pile, the hot heat on the pile. We started hearing that later on, and that shaped everyone.
Right.
We didn't hear that there's not enough rubble.
Well, here's the example.
The assumption of the explosions. There's a video clip we're going to play later that it's
going
to blow your mind.
Oh, I'm excited about it. But I just wanted, the listeners to understand. Just in a quick example, Paul McCartney was killed or died in '66. Okay.
Yeah.
Now you want to discredit that. So what you do is you tell some truth.
We're going to talk about 9/11 and what we can see.
Yeah, but I'm giving an example. By putting out the real story in a conspiratorial way that so if people try to repeat it, they sound like they're nuts. In other words, there was a movie that came out a couple years ago that was supposedly a tape done by George Harrison on his deathbed. Okay, well, if the guy who did that isn't really George Harrison's voice, and they put that out to the public, when it leaks out that wasn't really George Harrison's voice, then everybody goes, okay, the whole thing is a myth. When in fact, the whole thing is not a myth, but that must have been.
Let's get back to 9/11 and talk about what happened on 9/11. Did you see enough debris there? You saw George Stephanopoulos talking there. Look behind him. Where's the building? Is there a big pile there? By the end of the week, we're being told about this big rubble pile, humongous rubble pile. But you look and, right after the event, where's the rubble? Every single bit of evidence is consistent with that. And okay, then we hear the story about the, lots of heat. See, it picks up after it because they need kind of an organic start, but then it just, at a drop of a hint, innocent people pick up that hint and run with it. And one of those hints was by these FEMA gals who said hot steel-toed boots. They were melting on the pile because it was so hot. I've got that sound to play. Let's see if I can make that go. Whoops, I had my the thing's muted. All right, I'll start again. It's on the video page.
The women go in and out of Ground Zero up to 10 times a night, often until 2 in the morning, delivering whatever it is rescue workers need to do their jobs, like the ones working in the hotspots.
Steel-toed boots is one of the biggest things.
Steel-toed boots?
Steel-toed boots. Out, still on the rubble, it's still, I believe, 1,100 degrees. The guys' boots just melt within a few hours, and they're burning their feet.
Now, let's think logically about this. If my steel oven is melting, the turkey inside is more than well done. Yet there are no reports of burned feet. And if the rubble pile is that hot, where it's actually a debris field, if it's that hot, it's like you'd be burning your steak on a grill at that temperature. So just listening to this, they sound like lunatics, but I'm not blaming them. They're not physicists. They're just repeating something that somebody told them. And then it gets repeated over and over again by people who should know better. real physicists that should know better.
Or they're in on it. Or they were told this is what you say, like the actors outside.
No, they I think it works much better if they believe it. So what it is, whoever says a statement like that, those are the videos that get put forward. But they emerge naturally. But anyway, here's Rudy Giuliani. Okay, let's say we hate him because he has lots of money or whatever reason. But does he really want to make a fool of himself? And listen to what he says here. Whoops. Again, this is the sound effects. Yeah, how does he know what the temperature is on the rubble pile? He's talking
There were fires of 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit below the ground. I could be standing here and you could be standing there. And I could be describing to you, Governor, the site. And then a fire would break out in between us. And it was just by luck or the design of God that we weren't killed.
Now, is he standing on 2,000 degree, barbecue grill? But what you can get from this is he's describing something weird. Apparent fires that just burst out. In order for an apparent fire to burst out, if it's truly a fire, it has to be that temperature. But it can't be that temperature because he's standing on it. Like this, the paper's not burning. So all these stories about hot molten metal flowing like rivers. Well, we know it's not hot. Whatever it is, it's not hot. We can say something is glowing, something is flowing. Or something that looks like fire, but Rudy Giuliani didn't get burned up and he was standing on a grill that was 2,000 degrees, a barbecue grill. That's what I'm talking about, being able to not make assumptions of the evidence.
Right. Let's go back to towers, because you said they didn't slam to the ground, they didn't, they weren't blown up.
They didn't burn up.
They were turned to dust, and we found that there's no evidence of a rubble pile. What of the evidence was that they didn't slam to the ground? Let's just, I want to really let everybody know that they did turn to dust. Get it?
Yeah. Well, you could look at it. We saw some of it turning to dust right there. And also, if we look on the hot page and you look down that, there's if you start down that page from the top, there's some little guys waving their arms, and you see between them it says index. You can see that all the way down the page in each section. But you don't see the guys waving. That's directed here. So if you click on that, you're at this index of shortcuts. If you go to item H and click on the blue button, item H, dustification, and click there, you see, a whole lot of stuff turning to dust. Now look at figure 45. And I call it shaving cream or Alka-Seltzer. That's a choke up. What?
I said we didn't look at this picture last week.
Okay, you see, it's opaque dust trailing this steel wheat checks, unit as it's falling down. Now, is that from dirty windowsill? Somebody didn't dust this week or last month or dust for a year? That's a lot of dust. It's opaque. And I like people to just mentally think about this. Okay, let's say you're going to impersonate that steel wheat checks. You stand on the top of the towers, you cover yourself with dust, and you jump off. The person on the ground looks up. Are they going to see that much dust coming off of you? Nope. Okay, so you grab a bunch of armloads of bags of flour and you heave the flour out as you're falling. Nope. Still, you can't put out that much dust. Pretty soon you realize that steel wheat checks has to be generating that dust. It's turning to dust as it goes down. And then if you look at figure 47, the same thing. It's a tremendous amount of dust trailing down. Then pretty soon you look at, the bubbler picture, I call it figure 42. The whole building just frothing up into dust. Now, if you see a piece of, material flying through the air turning to dust, as we saw in that slow motion thing, or in figure 49, often it's said by the detractors that, that's dust that settled on it. And then it because the dust is so fine, it hung in the air when the steel columns fell over. Well, here,
which picture is this one?
Figure 49. It's a series of images, and these columns are about 700 feet tall. These are part of the core columns, and the building peels away, like peeling a banana, and the building goes away, and then, a few seconds later, this thing, leaves a silhouette of dust behind. It starts to fall and it turns into dust. And so, my detractors say, that was the dust that settled on it. Well, first of all, how is dust going to settle on it? And 0.00001 seconds. And how's it going to settle on vertical columns? And that first image, figure A of the 49A, you don't see any haze of dust around it. And then they say the dust is so fine it hangs in the air. Well, how did it settle on it if it's so fine it hangs in the air? You can't have it both ways.
No. So that is visual. That is visual, and there's 5 images there that just take you from a solid steel down to a dust.
And the fact that this is unsupported, sticking way up there, says that steel is strong and robust in order to stand by itself and support itself for a few seconds, but then it just is turning to dust. And in figure 48, you see that's the CNN. I think Aaron Brown is it's the Good Lord video. I call it. He says Good Lord, when he plays it. You can see that it's like the steel column just kind of faints into dust. There's a whole lot of different views. People say it falls over. Well, if it fell over to the far direction, if you looked at a video 90 degrees to that, you should be able to see it tipping over. You don't see it tipping over. How about, 180 degrees from that? You don't see it tipping over. 270 degrees from that, you don't see it tipping over. There's video of it all around. It doesn't tip over. Plus, you'd see, 700 feet tall. If it fell onto an adjacent building, it would take out, a couple city blocks. It would slice them, the buildings. Didn't happen. You don't see it down the rubble field. And what I think that is the top of stairwell B, the top of that area where the 14 people survived. Below that.
Well, stairwell B.
Yep. Yeah. That's you can look and see it looks like some of the higher definition videos that have been released since then. You can see I call them little stringies, little wires and stuff hanging out of the if you get close enough to that tall column. Little crisp wires sticking out, or rebar or something. It's and then you can notice it looks like it's the stairwell in there, that region.
Right.
So that's dustification. So it's not pulverization. Pulverization is something banging against something. That's kinetic energy that causes pulverization. Like somebody getting a hammer and smashing something against a rock. That's kinetic energy. If you cook something until it becomes a gas, that's vaporization. Neither one of those things apply. We see a building turn to dust. Instead of using...
Not evaporation either.
Right, because that's like vaporization. It's so we need a different term. Instead of using the inappropriate term, because then you're going to assume heat caused. It's kind of like calling the haze, calling it smoke. You're going to assume fire is the cause rather than something turning to dust. So I used this new word, and it's very easy to use because it's obvious what it means, dustification. The definition of it is whatever it was that was happening there. Instead of being a solid unit, it turned into dust as it fell.
Dustified.
Yep, dustified. It needs to be added to the dictionary because we haven't seen this before. It's a new phenomenon, so it needs a new word to describe it.
Yep, so there's no rubble, and you can visually see it turn to dust.
Yep, and a lot of folks, to try to answer the detractors who say, oh, she's using, idiot terms. Oh, she's trying to dumb it down for you. No, that is not the case. This is the most scientific way of describing it. You can call it characteristic 297-3A. That's hard to remember. Instead, I call it dustification. That word isn't in the dictionary, so it can't be confused with anything else. And I think we know the meaning of it from the root of the word, dust. So dustification is, a good placeholder in case we do find something that's already been defined. But it's whatever it is that's going on here. We're calling it dustification. And I don't think we've seen that before.
No.
But that is a very important lesson. It's instead of making an assumed problem, we're not going to solve an assumed problem, an imaginary problem. We're going to solve the real thing. So we're just going to call it this term for convenience, so we can break the habit of calling it something that's inappropriate, like pulverization or vaporization or evaporation. Because, if we don't know that that's what the correct term is, or aerosolization, that's a specific process. We don't know that's what the process is. But we can be correct, absolutely scientifically correct, if we call it dustification, as long as we define that term.
Right. So, shall we look at the bathtub then? Because that didn't break neither.
Yeah, well, the section right below there is lather. That's just my term for the opaque dustification. And like what Building 7 was doing all afternoon, you had this opaque, wall of stuff coming out of it. I call that lather. It's just opaque. It's not wispy. And somebody, I don't know if you asked or somebody else asked about Tower 1 and 2 did the same kind of thing. Figure 50. Yeah, Figure 50 shows Tower 1 lathering up. One face. But it just did it for very briefly.
Yeah, pasted that into chat room. Figure 50.
Figure 50.
Ah.
You see, that's the North Tower. And you can tell it's the North Tower because it's got that TV antenna poking up out of the middle. That identifies.
That's not an image you don't often see. You don't often see many truth movement people.
Oh, why don't they? Yeah. Guess why? You can't say that's fire.
An image. No, you can't. If there were fires on a few floors, it's not going to do that on the entire side of the building.
Right. Yeah, sure, we have some process that's black, some process that's the lighter color. Fine. We don't need to define what those are if we don't know. Just, you have the, lighter, dustification and darker dustification. Because that describes what we see in the picture. And that was right after Tower 2 went poof, and the dust cloud was kind of rolling out. And folks could say, well, that was the dust cloud from Tower 2. Well, Tower 2 is only a few feet away. How did it get uniformly up the side of Tower 1 to cover the whole face? That means that that's proof that Tower 2 had to turn to dust in order to have done that, if that's what somebody's gonna state.
Yeah.
So, not knowing exactly what's going on here, you can, either it's emanating from Tower 1 or it rolled up the side, but if it rolled up the side, that dark stuff at the top would be punched up further.
Yeah.
If you had a big updraft. So it captures something happening.
Building 7 doesn't support that because Building 7's got nothing lathering up against it. It's on its own and it's doing exactly the same thing here. So you could say, Building 2 fell down and it lathered up against the side of Building 1, but then what fell down and lathered up against Building 7?
7 started lathering up before Tower 1 went poof. So if someone wants to say it's the debris from Tower 1, look at Figure 51. I call it the shower scene. They're lathering up together. Building 7 and Tower 1.
Okay, yep.
That was when Building 7 started lathering up. And maybe it's a good time to mention it. It wasn't just two buildings that were destroyed that day. It wasn't just 3 buildings that were destroyed that day. It wasn't just 4 buildings that were destroyed that day. It wasn't just 5. It wasn't just 6. All 7 buildings with the WTC prefix were destroyed that day. 4 of which were towers. And I define a tower as something taller than it is wide. So there are 4 towers. Not 3. There are 4 towers. There's a 22-story building 3, which is this little skinny thing, bent building. It was between Tower 1 and 2 and parallel to the bathtub wall. Well, we can look at that later, but it was 7 buildings.
7.
Okay, what would you like to talk about next? See, at the top of each section, there's a little tiny link that says index. It'll take you back up to the index.
I asked you what evidence there was that suggested that the buildings didn't slam to the ground, and you gave me 3 examples. And you said breaking the bathtub were one of them. We haven't even done that yet. So, let's go to G. Bathroom. Now, I don't have a seismic chart in this one, but there's ones elsewhere. I think you played some already last week. But go to you can jump up to the top by hitting the little link at the top of each section, and then click on the button next to G. And we're going to talk about seismic impact. Okay.
And we have this this bathtub wall. You think of it as really a dike. And they brought in, trucked in dirt and filled it in. Now, what you see in Figure 35, some of the figures have duplicate numbers. I haven't changed it because I refer to them, and I don't want to get out of sync with the recording. But what you see in the distance is World Financial Center buildings 2 and 3 that were right across the street from building from Tower 1, and you're looking at the footprint of Tower 1. See that kind of puddle on top of some shiny concrete there? Or what looks like shiny concrete? That's the very bottom of the bathtub, right at the very base of all of Tower 1. Now look in the distance.
There's no underground there of Tower 1.
There's nothing further down. We're at the very bottom. Now look in the distance on the right, and you see, you can count down 7 stories. Those are the parking garages below Tower 6, or Building 6.
To the right hand side.
Yeah, see that you have the yellow level, the pink level, the blue level. So you know where your car was parked.
Hmm.
So you know where your car was parked.
Yep.
And they didn't want to take that down too soon because it's supporting the bathtub wall. That's the original bathtub wall. If you click on that picture, you should get a big picture should open up, or you can paste that link directly in. I'll give it to you guys here.
I've already pasted it into the chat room, I think.
Oh, okay. Okay, and look at the walls. That's not repaired. That's rust from years that's on that wall. This is the outer wall. The Hudson's on the other side. And there's actually another wall they built further down because they wanted to build the World Financial Center there later. But when they were building the towers, the Hudson was right on the other side of that wall. Right. And this is not ruptured. This is not repaired. This is just as it was. It's got scratches on it and dings in it and whatnot. It's got, problems happen elsewhere, but it kept the Hudson out. It didn't crash in. And here it's unsupported, which is even more dangerous. But where the parking garage is, it does support that. Now, you have the PATH train. That's the Port Authority Trans-Hudson. It's like a subway that goes under the Hudson River from the New Jersey side up into the bathtub. Turns around, goes back out. What you're looking at in this bathtub picture, right where the parking garage is, see where those holes are? Just below those holes and in the parking garage, that's where the subway goes out. And those are access ports to do something to the tunnel for the subway. But would you believe that the tunnel didn't get destroyed? They were worried about it because they had water down there, but with all the open, underground of the World Trade Center with all the fire hoses on, water had to drain somewhere. Once they pumped it out, it stayed dry. It did not rupture. The tunnel, and that was built in the early 1900s, like 1909, I think is when the PATH train station opened, the first started sending, so it was built like, 1905, 6, 7, somewhere in there. They built stuff pretty well back then. You can have, a building going bam down on top of it and it doesn't, you take this hose kind of running under the Hudson River, you shake it, it's going to wiggle, it's going to, crack.
So if there had been bombs, we'd have broke that wall.
Bingo.
Yeah, so when you hear, is it William Rodriguez that claims he can hear bombs in the basement?
Yeah, we're not going to go into talking about what somebody else thought they heard or whatever. We're looking at what we can observe, ourselves.
Yeah.
We're not, depending on what.
I'm just going to say that if we're using that as a witness evidence, what he heard weren't bombs, because if he had heard bombs, we'd have broke the wall.
We're just going to talk about what we see. Okay, on figure 36. That's in February 22nd, 2002, when they were, cleaning out the bathtub there. They got one of the PATH trains. The PATH train was parked under where Tower 1 had been. And that's a whole PATH train. It didn't get squashed. So when people talk about all the rubble getting stuffed into the basement, it didn't happen. Because the parking garage would have been crushed. That PATH train would have been crushed. And so, also if this building had slammed to the ground, you'd expect to see, a pretty big sized earthquake. Looking at the mass and the potential energy, and then comparing it to the Seattle King Dome, because there's a lot of seismic data for the Seattle King Dome that they took down with controlled demolition, because it's near some fault lines, and they were really worried about, major catastrophes could get unzipped. So they were monitoring all of the area with lots of different mobile seismic units. So that's why I picked the Seattle King Dome, because the evidence is so available. That had an S wave and a P wave, and it made a 2.3 equivalent on the Richter scale. Well, Tower 1 made a 2.3, and Tower 2 made a 2.1, less. But it's 30 times, that's 3 times 10 times the potential energy. It's a much bigger building that would go slamming to the ground. It didn't happen. You know, it actually, if you turned everything of Tower 1, we're going to compare Tower 1, it's even more dramatic for Tower 2, but let's say from the 20th floor on up to the 110th floor, you turned Tower 1 to dust, and you just had, you know, a 20-story building left that's not even extra robust, but just, you know, 20 divided by 110, that proportion, you know, just as though the weight was evenly distributed, but it's more heavy at the bottom. But we'll say it's evenly distributed. If you just have that 20-story building left at that footprint and drop it to the ground, I would expect it to make like a 2.3 on the Richter scale. So what about the other 90 stories? Not only that, the stab wounds across the street in adjacent buildings, you don't see any stab wounds, but really much above the 18th floor.
Yeah, so that's pretty much conclusive, really.
You see a big dome across the street from Tower 1, and it's not clobbered, it's not dinged up, it's not dented, you know, it didn't have anything landing on it. It's just the bottom part of the building that, you know, came apart, and that, you know, that's about the amount of material you have there.
Can I just interject something, Matthew?
Sure. Anytime you want.
Earlier on. What I'll do is I'll put a link in the chat window in a minute, because it refers to William Rodriguez and some statements he made when he was on Simon Mayo's Radio 5 Live program. Just to sort of put a tiny bit of context before, you know, you can carry on with Dr. Wood. As you know, Dr. Wood started a court case, which I don't know whether you'll talk about that, but we did mention that briefly last week. And also, Dr. Morgan Reynolds, at the same time, also filed a court case with a sort of on a similar basis, basically. One, Dr. Wood's was about the buildings, and Dr. Reynolds' case was about the alleged plane crashes. So I'll paste that link in the chat window in a minute, and then people can go and listen to the Rodriguez clip that will be on that link and see what they think of that.
Okay, thanks. You see, what I'm hoping to do is I'm hoping to leave my radio weekly show open to Dr. Judy Wood to get as much information. I want to come back next week after, 5 weeks, 10 weeks. I don't care how many weeks, until we get every single nuance of 9/11, every stone unturned, every nook and cranny, every detail, until there's no doubt left in people's minds. And then I want to get the cover-up completely exposed, so you know who you're dealing with when these people are talking. And then people who are supporting these people, you've got to wonder whether they're supporting these people because they know the truth and they're covering it up, or they're supporting these people because they've been duped, like I was, like you was, like everybody who's listening to this who thinks nukes were involved, bombs were involved, thermite were involved. There's too much evidence.
Those are assumptions. That's what, yeah.
Yes, they are.
But look at what's there. It takes a lot of discipline to
after
do
talking
that. But
to Dr. Judy Wood for a long time,
you get your knuckles hit with a ruler.
It's quite clear that there's too much evidence. We don't need to look at any other event.
You don't need to make assumptions. You don't need theories or assumptions.
Like, 9/11 has got it all. And it's even got a remedy. It's even got a remedy if we can get to the remedy. We've got a remedy.
This link that I just put in the Skype window that ends with 304 at the end. Check out that image. That's the remains of Building 7. When people say it was a irregular controlled demolition, explain how the building turned to mud. It's a big mud pie. Yeah, how does a building turn to mud?
I'm doing it.
It was made out of Jello pudding.
Right. Mud pie.
Yes. Well, what date is this on?
Let's see. Do I have the date of it in there? I don't know if I have the date of this in there. I have it in my book. It's not long afterwards.
Not long afterwards.
Yeah, it's because they got this was the first spot they cleaned up quickly, but the dirt appeared like overnight. Everything was covered with dirt, mud.
So do you want to talk about the mud then? Because we didn't even cover that last week. So we'll have something fresh because we're pretty much we've just gone over everything we did last week, but in more depth and from different pictures and different angles.
Okay, on that AHA page with the WTC page, if you go to the index of it, and N is dirt. If you click on that button, you go to this, and you can look at, figure 90 in this section, at the top of it. If you look closely, do a blow-up of that, you see it looks like fresh potting soil that just arrived. That picture was uploaded on the FEMA site on the 16th. So it was taken before that day. And, here's, a bunch of fresh potting soil with crisp boundaries to it. Like it was just brought in with a wheelbarrow and plop, dumped there, or a backhoe or something. Same with figure 91.
So that's within 5 days, and there's no footprints in that soil.
Figure 91 was uploaded in the system on the 13th of September, 2001. It could have been taken on that day or the day after, but not, no later than the 13th. Now, if you do a blow-up of that picture, that's figure 91.
Yeah.
That's the 3885 JPEG. I'll give you that link here.
It's already in chat window. It's already there. I've done it.
Oh, okay, good. You notice that this, you get a fresh look at the clumps of dirt around there. It's not sprinkled evenly over the ground. It's in clumps. Like on the left-hand side, kind of near in the foreground, you have a piece of aluminum cladding. You have bare parts and then clumps of dirt, like it was dumped with a wheelbarrow or something. I'm not saying how it got like that, but it's not sprinkled from uniform sprinkling all around. And this is like immediately after the event. But one thing that's even more important, people are saying, hot steel-toed boots melting and rivers of molten, whatever the images of heat. Now we're going to go through some deprogramming here. Look at the guy on the right, kind of in the foreground. See at the kind of the base of his feet, there's a bunch of hoses. They're oxy-fuel hoses. And they run along the ground. You see a guy off in the distance on near the left side of the page, left of center.
Yeah.
He's got a torch in his hand, a cutting torch. And so you have these oxy-fuel hoses all over the pile, or debris field. We should train ourselves to call it debris field. And this is one of the things that Jesse Ventura was telling Alex Jones. He says, Alex, you got oxygen hose all over the ground there. You wouldn't dare do that if it was hot now, would you? He makes a very good point. Are you going to drag oxy-fuel hoses over the ground that's 2,000 degrees or over your grill?
Giuliano named it 2,000 degrees.
Right.
Yeah, so this is the area that's meant to be 2,000 degrees and they've got oxygen hoses over it.
Yeah. And this is right, like in the next day or so. They upload the picture.
Alex might.
That's true.
Never know what that crazy person will do.
But you see these fumes. Okay, it should look like it's hot, but or steam. It reminds you of steam, but don't call it steam. That's why I call it fumes, because that keeps you from making the assumption that the cause is heat. And it turns out that if they wet it down or on rainy days, you don't get the fumes coming out. It quiets it. If it was hot steam, from doing steam, you would get more of it on a wet day.
Okay, let's look at some more soil pictures.
Okay, the next picture's down, figure 93. The dirt goes in, the dirt goes out.
Right, so this is an interesting point, because this isn't just, how long have they been doing this?
Oh, this is, I think this one's dated the 27th of September.
So
you see those 4 trucks as the yellow front end. Figure 94 is a blow up of that. You see those trucks.
Yeah.
Right. If you click on 93, you get a close up of that image, and you can see they got stuff in those trucks. Oh, they're going to do road paving today, or is that a black tarp over dirt that they have in there? And this is 1 block north of the World Trade Center. They're heading south towards the World Trade Center.
Right.
So how do you explain why they just decided to drive down that street, on that day with, some kind of material in their truck?
No, what I'm getting is, when you arrived, you've been to the site with Andrew Johnson a good few years later.
We'll get to that. We're talking about this. It's just a few days after 9/11.
Few days after 9/11.
These trucks with a yellow cab on them that have something in them. It looks like they have a tarp over them, and they're driving into Ground Zero. Now, figure 95. Click on that one. Okay. Here they are driving out. This is Liberty Street, and you see the 10 and 10 firehouse there. If we could turn around and look 180 degrees behind us, that is where Building 4 used to stand. So this is this Bankers Trust on the right, and they're going through this kind of a check station where they have that gizmo that pulls the tarp over the truck. And look at the white truck there. It looks like loaves of bread rising. It's smooth. Now the green truck has, junk in it, but the white one, it looks smooth, like smooth dirt. Same with the one in front of it, the one in front of that. And they're, hosing them down and covering them with the tarp. And when I was there in the fall of 2007 with Russ Gerst and Morgan Reynolds, but I think he'd already left, but Russ Gerst and I were walking around, and I think it was Russ who said, "Oh, look, he's opening up the gate, so get the camera ready." And it was actually this very intersection. And here they were hosing down the truck, coming out, and the cover didn't quite come over the tarp, but the guy pulled up a few, like half a block up, stopped, got out, and somebody else hopped in, he got in the driver's seat and drove off. So the guy who drove the truck out from inside, behind the gate with the hidden, fence, he drove out just like a block, and then another driver took over to drive it off to who knows where.
And when's this? When's this image?
Fall of 2000. This image we're looking at is right after 9/11, but the one that I'm talking about, and I have pictures of that on my website too in the Dirt series, but that was that was in the fall of 2007. They were still trucking dirt in and out. The dirt comes in, the dirt goes out.
So 6 years later, they're still putting dirt in and out.
Yeah, this particular picture here is from right after 9/11, and that's Bankers Trust on your right, and you see the red traffic light, and further down you can see there's a guy who's checking. He's got a white shirt on or something. He's checking to make sure the top is down. I don't know if they have a temporary scales there to measure the weight of something leaving, but that's dirt being trucked out, as well as that green truck has junk in it, but more than just dirt. But the other ones, it's very uniform looking. Like
when was the latest time you were there to see this?
Well, I was there with Andrew in January 2008. And there's fumes coming out of the ground, dirt coming in, dirt going out.
Still fuming in 2008, and there's dirt coming in and out.
It quieted down quite a bit. Now, if you look at, here's September 2007, figure 92. You look at that one. You can argue as to why they're doing whatever they're doing, but that's a lot of dirt. Why are they hauling dirt out? They bring dirt in, you stir it around, take it back out. Maybe they're using it to stabilize something. They were, making a deeper bathtub wall, but they're trucking dirt in and out. And that's nice dirt. That's fresh potting soil looking. I mean, it's a nice, rich looking dirt. That's not just gravel for, weighting something down. It's really nice looking dirt. Would you say?
That's bizarre behavior.
That's topsoil.
It's bizarre behavior.
Yeah, you can look for the explanation, and but we're witnessing they're just trucking dirt in and out for whatever reason.
Yeah.
So, and we of course have the audio recording of Rudy Giuliani the morning of the 12th, talking about we had 120 dump trucks, carrying stuff out, coming and going overnight. And they'll be working all throughout the day today, as though he's planning on cleaning things up by 5 p.m.
I think the point is, if they're shipping stuff out, you could say they were excavating or digging or doing something. But if it's becoming in as well, raises some serious questions on what they're doing.
Right. Also, that white truck we saw going out looks like bread loaves in there. I mean, it's nice, smooth, round top. It's very uniform looking. What are you doing hauling that out instead of looking for people to save? If you're dislodging, you ever play the game Pick Up Sticks? You take a whole bunch of pencils and you long, skinny, or straw or something. Then you dump them, and then the game is to see if you can how many sticks you can pull out before you have an avalanche. Well, if you're looking to rescue people, you don't want to disturb the pile. You want to see if you can get between the nooks and crannies without dislodging those sticks. So what are they doing hauling, the sticks out before they've rescued people, or look to see if there's anybody to rescue? So it doesn't make sense that they'd be hauling steel beams out. If you're looking for people, you don't want to, be hauling out beams and, large weight of stuff.
Okay. Have you got the? Shall we talk about the people? Because they did find someone, didn't they, in the dust?
Yeah. We can play that audio. Let's see. I have that on a web page, I think. Let's see. This is. I'm going to the Towers series and page 8, and I hope it's there. Pages take a bit of time to load up.
On the video page?
Yeah. No, not on the video page. I'm on the Towers series. The ones that go with chapter 8. Let's see.
Okay, I'm with you.
I don't remember if it was there we saw it, or no, maybe it was on the video page.
I thought you played it from your computer.
Yeah, I thought I did too. So trying to remember where it is. It's let's see. The video page is at the top. I'm gonna open that up. Hope my puny memory can handle it all. That's the steel turning to dust, and they were acknowledging that the building turned to dust. Oh, here's a good one. While I'm getting that one loading, this is getting ready to pull Building 6. The guy from, I think it's a North Carolina accent.
We discussed this last week. They had to pull it down with ropes because the dared use. Right.
So
explosives.
Here we could. I'm going to play that one now while the other page is loading, just to, make some. Here.
Hey, to pull Building 6.
We have to be very careful how we demolish Building 6. We were worried about the Building 6 coming down and then damaging the slurry wall, so we wanted that particular building to fall within a certain area.
Well, we got the cables attached in 4 different locations going up. They'll be pulling the building to the north. It's not every day you try to pull down an 8-story building with cables.
They're worried about it hurting the slurry wall. That's another term for the bathtub. They made it out of slurry to begin with, so they often refer to it as a slurry wall. That little remaining chunk of the western chunk of Building 6 was right adjacent to the bathtub wall. If they used a stick of dynamite, they were worried about it damaging the bathtub wall. Just a little stub of an 8-story building.
Right.
And anyway, so let's see that other the video page is now.
We possibly could have looked at the all of Building 4 and 6 before we looked at how they pulled it down, because you haven't got an insight to that building. It's
just playing that one. Let's see, where is that one? I don't remember where I saw that one.
I don't
know. Maybe it's on the dirt. Maybe I don't know if it's the Dirt series. Or was it in a video? Maybe it was the actual video itself that I have on my computer. Yeah, that's what it was. And let's see. I'm looking at the one with the woman. I don't know if we won't bother to cover the Building 7 thing right now just yet, but this one with this clip I have of this medical person being interviewed with Building 7 behind her.
Are you playing it now?
Yeah, I'm getting ready to, and I'm just going to describe it because it's on my computer, but you have a copy of it.
I'll put it into the video.
She's being interviewed, and you see Building 7 right behind her. And the Building 7, you'll see the Building 7 just start going down. And then the people who are watching the interview and see that say, "Whoa, yeah, ah!" She turns around and says, "What happened? What happened?" She has no idea what happened. She didn't hear anything dropping behind her. She didn't hear any bombs going off behind her. She didn't know where to look. Like, where do I look? And then they said Building 7 just collapsed, and she said, no, it already went down. that tells you how coherent people were about what was what. They didn't know what building's what. It's all right. Here we go.
No bangs, no explosion. No bangs and no explosions, and it's right in behind her.
Yeah, I'll play it as loud as I can. Yeah, she's getting interviewed.
Hold on, yeah, we're quick. It'll take 2 seconds to fire this up. Hold on. Speak, your name, ma'am?
Barbara Crowley.
Crowley.
NYU Medical Center.
Okay, tell me what you know.
All I know at this point is they're trying to establish an outdoor hospital facility like we've set up at Chelsea Piers, a triage unit, for the personnel that are attending to the scene, not to the injured in the scene. They can't get in to get any casualties out at this time. They don't know the extent of it at this point. What we're doing now is going up to get medical supplies, to bring down trauma physicians down here, to set up the surgical unit and the triage unit down here, in addition to, if anybody out there can help, any vendors who have food or supplies. The firemen have no food, nothing but snacks. They need fluids, they need water, and they need protein foods. This is just the beginning of what they're facing. And we need masks. We need TB masks. Holy shit! What is it?
What just went down?
What just went down?
World Trade 7.
It did go down before.
No, 7. Number 7.
Oh my God!
What happened? She's turned around. She didn't know where to look. She didn't hear anything.
No pops.
No pop.
Crackles.
But from the way the camera's aimed, you can see the building behind her, Building 7. But she's reacting to the gasps from the audience. You can hear people from distance away are getting picked up on their old microphone. So. But you don't hear other stuff. And she obviously didn't hear bangs and pops because she was surprised that... I'll play that section. It's right around the middle of that video. I'll play it again.
Help any vendors who have food or supplies. The firemen have no food, nothing but snacks. They need fluids, they need water, and they need protein foods. This is just the beginning of what they're facing. And we need masks. We need TB masks. Holy shit! What is it?
What just went down?
What just went down?
World Trade 7.
It did go down before.
No, 7. Number 7.
Oh.
She didn't know what building was what. I was wondering about that myself. Like I was talking to a firefighter. A police officer who was on the scene, and I said, "Well, did you notice anything missing? Like a couple of buildings or so? 2 or 3 buildings?" He goes, "Well, we didn't know where we were. All of our landmarks, we couldn't see. Everything was the same color." You didn't know where you were. So you didn't realize what was missing, what wasn't. You just, everybody was kind of in a tailspin and numbed.
It's unbelievable.
I also have, the CNN, few people realize, when they talk about the BBC gal with, foreknowledge, foreknowledge came from CNN. She's just reporting what you heard on CNN. CNN announced it earlier, and the next day CNN was even announcing that a premature announcement of One Liberty Plaza. One Liberty Plaza is still standing.
Have you got the CNN announcement of Building 7?
Yeah. You don't. I can't play this over the thing. Well, you can add it into the when you make the video of this, but it's the ticker across the bottom of the screen says confirmed. Partial collapse of One Liberty Plaza. Confirmed? Apparently, somebody saw a piece of glass falling out of a window, and everybody panicked and they evacuated, like, the building's coming down. Somebody thought they saw the building twisting. And all right, here's, whoops. I open up my window further. I had to make the window wider. Okay, here it is.
Judy?
All right, Jamie McIntyre at the Pentagon. Now quickly back to Aaron.
Judy, thanks. I'm just going to stay off to the side here.
And they're watching
the camera to stay focused on the scene. We were keeping our eye on that gray building in...
I'm going to stop for a minute. They're so worked up and their nerves are so on edge. It's like they want to catch it falling because they think it's about to fall and they've evacuated the area, and they've got that in the picture frame here.
I wish I could see the monitor better. Let me just look at it. In roughly the tallest building I think you can see, Gary Tuckman, who has been down on the ground and in fact one of the few civilians into the ground zero area. Gary, can you hear me? Gary Tuckman, are you able to hear me now?
Aaron, I hear you fine. I want to tell you, an hour and 15 minutes ago, as you said, I was at ground zero with 1,000 to 2,000 rescue and recovery workers at the scene. They are all being evacuated as we speak. Most of them are now gone because of that One Liberty Plaza building, which is just to the east of the World Trade Center complex. We have talked to rescue workers who tell us they saw the building starting to twist, and then said they saw some windows starting to break.
Well, we are seeing the windows breaking from where we're standing. We could see the windows falling out or facing falling out.
Okay, you have another angle, and you certainly have a better angle than me, because from our angle, and we're to the north of the building, we haven't seen the windows, so it's interesting information. I want to tell you, Aaron, that there are a lot of people who are at the site who are very frightened by that, because they had told us while we were there that they were quite worried about one or two of the buildings surrounding the World Trade Center complex. They had told us that while we were there, and now they're living through it. We can also tell you the media has been pushed back several blocks also from the perch that we were at, about 4 blocks away from the World Trade Center complex.
It's like they're so convinced that building's coming down that they want to watch it, and they evacuate the area. And it was twisting, and broke windows coming out. That building is still standing to this day.
Structurally sound.
Yep. It was right across the street from Building 4, diagonally across from the Burger King. It's a 54-story building. That's a big building. That's bigger than Building 7. And somebody thought they saw it twisting. That's a frightened person. They're all frightened. And they're all like on edge, like, these buildings just went away, and what's going to happen next? They don't know. They're not looking back in history. They're living it. And it would be pretty frightening, because you don't know if a bomb is about to go off or what's going to happen. And they want to make sure they start running in time.
It's unbelievable.
But it says really at the bottom of the screen, it says, confirm, One Liberty Plaza partially collapsed. Okay, some, cracked pieces of window glass came loose and fell down. Is that partially collapsed? But it's that they're just so on edge. So imagine what they were like on 9/11. Just like we heard that, it was a first responder said he heard that airplane crashed into the Empire State Building. I actually heard a recording from one of the choppers who had heard that the White House was on fire, or the Capitol was on fire. It's just word of mouth they're passing around, so rumors are going to bounce around until something gets absolutely confirmed.
I forgot which clip I asked you to look for now. I'm completely... I've lost where I am.
It was the one with the doctor. I don't remember where that one is. I don't have it in this stash. So that's why I think it was on a page. Maybe it's on... would it be on my... because we also looked at the Dirt series.
Yeah, we did.
So it might be on that. That would be... let's see, I'm going to go ahead and leave this one. I think it's Dr. Judy Wood. No, that didn't work. drjudywood.com/articles/dirt. That's where that series is. It's and I'm wondering if it is from this one. Oh yeah, we did look at number page 2 and 3. So let's see if this is that fuzzball business. Let's see, it's not there. I'm looking on 3 now, because that one was. I tried around the ones we looked at, but I don't know where that was. There's still shots. There's Rudy Giuliani. There's the Gestapo picture. But this one's a pretty significant one. I found it. Yep, it's on Dirt. It's on Dirt 4 page. But I think we saw it from somewhere else. But let's see if I can open it up in YouTube. Yep. All right.
At 10:30, I tried to leave the building, but as soon as I got outside, I heard a second explosion and another rumble and more smoke and more dust. I ran inside the buildings, the chandelier shook, and again, black smoke filled the air. Within another 5 minutes, we were covered again with more silk and more dust.
Now, just because you hear the word explosion doesn't mean an explosive. You know, like put an egg in your microwave oven and listen carefully. Yeah, you're going to hear something explode. And what you actually should see, if bombs are going off, you would see a bang bang, hear a bang 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 and see a bang 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 bang. But these people are interpreting things the best they can.
Fire marshal came in and said we had to leave because if there was.
But let's see if I can find. Okay, I think this is it. Yep, this is it. It's around the 2-minute mark. Where are all the people? They ask these physicians, where are all the people? And the first doctor they ask, these are people who care about human beings. That's why they went into medicine. And this first doctor they ask, he's going into this engineering explanation. He can't handle the discomfort, the implications. He can't handle. So he goes into this engineering rationalization for why the buildings went down. And then another one, they talk about pulling people out. So I'm going to play it now. Yeah, I'm starting the 2:09 mark. Here we go.
Dr. Tony Daher. He and his partner, Dr. Lincoln Cleveland, are emergency room physicians from New York University Hospital downtown.
We saw all our casualties yesterday at our hospital stopped at about noon.
It got really strange and very spooky. Things just stopped coming in that had anything to do with the blast.
Now, that doesn't make sense for a collapsed building. They're only dealing with, rescue workers that got injured, not anybody from the building. And by noon, they stopped coming in. I'm going to continue here.
And, at the time, I was thinking you can read a couple things into that. Either people are buried and they're going to start bringing bodies out, or just everybody died.
Where are all the people who were in these buildings?
The buildings were built. The structural support of the building is the shell, is the skin of the building. I remember when they were built.
This is a doctor.
The innovative architecture of it is that the outer shell is where the strength of it is. And I think what happened is the whole thing imploded. It was like a chute that went straight down.
What does that mean to the inside?
It means that the explosion has nowhere to go except down. I think another building collapses, there's toppling, pieces fall off, there's a diffusion of the energy, and in this collapse, the energy all went straight down. And I think that, tragically, anybody in that chute did not survive. I think it probably had the force of close to a nuclear blast.
All right, I'm going to stop for a second and say, because they changed the scene here, that if all the force went down, we would have a seismic chart that showed an impact on the ground. We just had a surface wave, which is consistent with the weight being lifted off. You no longer have the two 500,000-ton buildings sitting there. Instead, pretend King Kong reaches over and grabs a building and just chucks it up in outer space. Just for a mental model, you don't have that weight on anymore. Like getting off your mattress, when you get up, it recovers, it bounces back. That's different than a hammer going bang, bang, bang on the bedrock. So, if it really did go straight down, it'd be like a big, huge hammer on the bedrock. It'd be like hitting a tuning fork with a hammer. And that didn't happen. But this is a medical doctor. He's trying to explain it because he's struggling. What information he's giving us is that what he saw happening, he doesn't have an explanation for it. So he's just reaching as hard as he can to try to explain it away. Because, where are all the people? That, you heard the silence before, he was very uncomfortable with that question. And they just had to, come up with some explanation. And you can see from his expression, he's in pain, he's traumatized. It doesn't add up. You should have a lot of bodies. But here they're going to talk about, they pulled out, they're going to ask some firefighters, and the firefighters thought they pulled out 2, but then the doctor talks about 1, and he was in good shape. He came from the 80-something floor. That's this part.
These firemen from Brooklyn have been taking the mountain down piece by piece, and many of them share the pessimism of the doctors.
It's what? It's just huge rubble.
Do you see anything of the victims, of the people who were in the building?
Yeah, 110 stories on top of everybody over there. It's just tough to say.
110 stories on top of everybody.
That's what the two buildings were.
We got a shot yesterday, the antenna that was on top of the tower. It's at ground level.
And yet there are no people to be seen.
They got a couple of Port Authority cops alive.
Right, last night?
Last night, this morning. Suppose they were like on the 80th floor from what we heard. But that's it so far.
I was here when they executed the police officer at 8 o'clock this morning, who was in very good shape, actually, amazingly enough. I think right now it's just going to be a very slow process of digging through rubble.
You know, Doctor, it seems to me that it must be very frustrating to be a physician and to have really so few patients to treat here.
You know, I don't know the numbers yet, but I certainly hope that means that a lot of people made it out alive. And obviously it's horrific and incredible tragedy for those people who lost their lives.
What do you make of this?
Words fail. Words fail.
That was the best statement of all. Yeah, he couldn't explain it. Words fail. But it was above the 80th floor is where this firefighter was. I mean, a police officer was. And he was in good shape. And there was somebody else who was on the 22nd floor. He called him the surfer. He ended up
literally he just rode down the dust cloud.
As the story goes, but what is that's his experience. But what we do know is that where those people came out of stairwell B, what was left is 4 stories worth of stairwell B. The surfer landed right on top of that. So if those guys in stairwell B had walked up the stairs, looked there they would have found the surfer. He was laying there right on top of the landing of the 4th floor. That's why I think there's something special about stairway B that didn't totally, toast the building. What I mean by toast is, in U.S. that term is used for its history. It's toast. Totally destroyed. You can't beyond repair. But what is interesting is they talk about somebody on the above the 80th floor, 82nd floor, I think they said, I'm not sure, but above the 80th floor, a Port Authority police officer, and he was in relatively good shape. How on earth could he be in relatively good shape?
Absolutely. If it were pancake collapse, it'd have been squashed. If it were,
if bombs going off, they'd be blown to bits by, if not sitting on the bomb, but having a piece of flying debris hit them. And also the stairwell B survivors, the 14 people there, they weren't squashed, they weren't crushed, they weren't burned up. They walked out, went home. They probably took them to the hospital to see if they're okay first, but and the surfer went home that night. That's incredible.
Do you know what happened to the policeman from the 80th floor? Did he go to hospital?
I haven't tracked him down, and I sort of hesitate on getting, identifying or whatever, because he's been through enough, and let him decide when to reveal himself. Like the surfer kept it inside for 10 years, and had, survivor's guilt and other issues going on, which you can completely understand. I mean, it's a horrendous thing, and then finally start to talk about it. But imagine, how the people in the truth movement they go attack these people. Okay, I'm going to divert a little bit, talk about Sandy Hook, calling up families who've lost, family members, calling them up, and how would you feel if you'd lost a child and then somebody say, "You're lying, you didn't have a child"? Unless you're absolutely sure, why do that to somebody? Or tell us about your story. Tell us about your, leave these people alone. They didn't choose to be there. They didn't choose for that to happen to them. And so, I have a lot of respect for these survivors and the victims, and let them, control their life. That was definitely an out of control situation. That's horrible. Like another one is Patricia Androvic, and she's been, was gone after by truthers and refused to talk to anybody else. But she has an interesting story. Buildings blowing up, her cars are blowing up as she's running down the street. She talks about her hair being on fire. And then her coat, she couldn't see where she was going because the dust went up and blocked out all the sunlight. But then her coat lit up, and it seemed to be, she described being on fire. But she never described any burns. And her coat was not, a human flashlight. She was a human torch. Her shoelaces caught on fire. Well, what she describes catching on fire. But she didn't talk about suffering from any burns. She didn't talk about being hit by anything, wasn't hit in the head by anything. And that was right.
You want to talk about the dust and maybe the dust roll out?
So yeah, it's a. Let's see if we have that on the AHA page. Let's see. I don't know if I have the dust roll out there or not. Fuzzy buzz, rolled up carpets.
Because the dust didn't just roll out in like an
I don't think I have it. I don't think I have it specified that way here. But yeah, it rolls out and then it goes up. Now there's a couple of just superficially identifying that without getting into the fine details what it appears to be. Think of this: you have a handful of gravel and you're going to throw it. It goes a certain distance. Now, if you have the same amount of mass in your hand as flour and try to throw it, it's not going to go very far because the fine pieces have a lot more surface area, which would cause resistance. And so, gravel flies further for the same amount of mass than fine dustified flour. Now, what happens if you throw that gravel and it turns into dust like flour midway on its journey of throwing it? It's not going to fly as far as it otherwise would because it's now has more wind resistance. And then you said the dust cloud looks like it rolls out a certain distance and quits rolling out and then goes up. And this video by Bob and Bree, you might want to add that in later. I'm not going to look it up now, but it rolls out and doesn't quite touch their window. It's beautiful. They close the window, and they're filming right out the window. Oh yeah. When they're filming, here's the tower starting to come apart, and it just sounds like a big waterfall. You don't hear a bang 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 pop 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 crunchity poppity bangity boomity. You don't hear that. That's what you'd hear with a collapse. Or you don't hear a bang 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 bang. You would hear with a controlled demolition of bombs going off. Instead, you see this thing go shh like waterfall. It's just turning to dust as it comes down. And it was just wonderful of them to capture this on film and then share it with us. And so they're filming it, and you see the dust cloud roll out. It rolls out a certain distance. It doesn't quite reach their building, and then it goes up. And if they opened their window and reached out, you could poke the edge of the dust cloud. It didn't touch their window. They filmed to the right and to the left, and to the right you can see this patch of green where they have boats that are carrying people off over to New Jersey to rescue, and the grass is still green. You look to the left and you look down the street, all the way across Manhattan, and you see the dust only went so far and then it went up.
So it ran out of momentum because it was continuing to break down into smaller pieces as it was traveling.
Yeah, you can see that there's some kind of a process going on. The simplest way to look at it is it went finer and finer and finer. Why it goes up, that's another issue. But it quits rolling out all about the same time, and then it goes up. Now that is not what controlled demolition dust does. First of all, in regular controlled demolitions, you don't get dust much higher than the original height of the building. And the dust doesn't happen until the building slams the ground, the majority of it. You use bombs to slice and dice the building so the chunks drop down and slam to the ground. They use, kinetic energy from gravity. And they slam it down to the ground, it busts up into pieces, and you get some dust, squirting out and going wherever, but really doesn't go much above the original height of the building. And I've got several examples in my book, Where'd the Towers Go? And in the Seattle Kingdom, when that went away or got blown up, it was pretty interesting that in the newspaper they said, wow, dust filled all of downtown for almost 20 minutes. Yeah, I think the World Trade Center, 20 months maybe? It definitely wasn't 20 minutes.
No, but you've got the top of one of the buildings when it twisted. That shows evidence.
Hang on, let's keep with this. So the dust rolled out and then went up, and that is not anything like controlled demolition.
No. It proves that the dust was continuing to get smaller and smaller and smaller as it was going forward.
Or something, an ongoing process, we can say that much. We haven't proved that it gets smaller. We've proved is that there's a process going on that stops it from rolling out. Because if you were ahead of that dust cloud as it's rolling out, first it's a little bit quick, so you have to, work up to a trot with your briefcase. You run down the street, and then as you get near that pedestrian bridge by Stuyvesant School, you can walk down. You can slow down to a brisk walk, and still stay ahead of the dust cloud. Then the dust cloud stops right at the bridge, and we do have that video. Let's see. Here's a link there, and the media is talking about the building turned to dust, but you can watch as it's approaching the bridge. Watch how the people who are trotting along at a gentle jog, and then they slow down to a brisk walk, to stay just ahead of the dust cloud. They're not too worried about they just want to stay ahead of the dust cloud.
Sample on a police car turned out dangerous. Another sample a couple of blocks away, not dangerous. But most interesting, in the mix, they think, at specks of steel that used to be beams and elevators.
Look at the people on the ground.
The lobby floor and facings. So what were once the strongest architectural elements in the two towers were pulverized. Large portions turned into clouds like this one. Still, there is this mystery. If some of the hardest materials were vaporized, how to account for the presence everywhere of paper? Fully intact letters, business forms, stationery. Paper is so fragile and combustible, and yet somehow, maybe because we have so much of it, it was everywhere.
You talk about all of the constituents of the building, essentially, were turned to dust. Except for paper. It was floating around. It wasn't stuck to anything. But you see right where it's coming up to the bridge, and that's right where the dust quits rolling out. Because you can see it from a helicopter picture. You see the white dust on the ground, just boom, an abrupt line. And I can tell you that was the dust cloud from Tower 1. You know how I know that? Tower 1 was a block further north of Tower 2. Tower 2 went first, and it rolled out to a block before the bridge. So they rolled out the same distance and stopped. And then when Tower 1 came down, it rolled past where Tower 2's, stop line was and went one block further to the bridge and then stopped. It's like the same amount of time they rolled out, same amount of distance they rolled out, whatever, and it's the same process going on. But you see these people jog, kind of a gentle jog, and then they realize, okay, I've got enough distance ahead of that dust cloud, and you start walking at a brisk pace. The people who weren't that far away from it, who were closer, they see this dust cloud and they're trying to run for their lives. You've seen those pictures of somebody terrified with the dust cloud bearing down on them. The dust cloud overtook them, kept on going, and it just left them covered with dust. They had trouble breathing, but left them covered with dust. And they had to stick their face in their armpit to use their clothing as a filter, air filter, because of the dust, but they didn't get burned up. So it's not a pyroclastic cloud. It just was dust. And there's another interesting thing that a first responder noticed. Firefighters are afraid of smoke because it means that the oxygen has been displaced out of the air. That's why they have their tanks that they wear. But here's all this, fumes, I'm going to call it generically. And the guy's realizing, wait, this is only dust. All right, like hot dig, like we should celebrate. It's not smoke. We can breathe.
And no reports of burns.
Right, no reports of burns. The dust was not hot. Actually, some of the first responders said that initially the dust cloud felt cooler than ambient temperature. They thought maybe because it, came down from so high up that, it brought the cool air with it. It was cooler than ambient temperature. That's not hot. But then it started eating kind of itchiness on the skin and like, if you pour acid on your hand, even if the acid you took out of the refrigerator and it's cool, it would feel hot because it was eating up your skin. Yep. And that's how your senses would perceive it. So if somebody described it as warm or hot, it could be from that reason. But if you stuck a thermometer into it that doesn't get affected by that, it would probably show lower than ambient temperature. And that is a very important piece of data.
Similar to eating a chili.
Well, you talk about where'd the energy come from. That wasn't energy being added in, that was energy being taken out of the environment. If it's cooler than ambient temperature.
Yeah. I see what you mean.
Why does a refrigerator get colder? Because the heat is taken out and put elsewhere.
Yeah.
So there's something that took the heat energy, took some heat energy out.
Yep.
So somebody says how much energy, hang on, so somebody says how much energy did it take? Well, what kind of energy? Maybe it took negative amount of energy because, it pulled energy from the environment. If it's cooler than ambient temperature, it's not exothermic reaction, it's endothermic. It's taking heat from, around there and, using that. Cause it's,
yeah, I was thinking about the top of the building where it twists and it doesn't fall.
The tipping top.
The tipping top, because that's more evidence of dust breaking.
Let's see if we know where that is. I don't have these videos very well organized or lined up. There's so many different things that I haven't looked at it for a long time.
If you just want to talk about it, I'll put it in behind.
Yeah, okay. What it does is the tipping top starts to tip. Now later on we can look at up close photos and see it doesn't tip as a unit. You got kinks in the corner. You notice it's already crumbling into sections. But let's assume it's you get this a quote plane crash. You get a plane shaped hole in the building. We won't argue about how it got there. But you have this damage at what was it on the South Tower? It was like 72nd floor plus or minus. Or 73rd, 74th, somewhere in the 70s. And then from there on up, you get this, 50 some odd minutes later, you get that tipping top that starts to tip over and hinges right at that point. Okay, if the top is hinging, see, the building below that, has the weight on it, but that part above it wouldn't be affected by this unless you say the fumes went up and did something to it. So it starts tipping over, starts to rotate over, and it appears to stop rotating. And, various truthers have said, it violates the laws of physics. No, it doesn't. It doesn't have to. If it's a rigid body and it stops tipping, that violates the laws of conservation of angular momentum. But if it's obeying the laws of physics, that means it as a unit it stopped tipping, but all the little particles inside of it continue rotating. That would maintain the conservation of angular momentum. So what that image does is prove that the building turned to dust. It's another proof. Or it's consistent with that. So the tipping top starts to tip over and appears to stop tipping because it is already turning to dust. It's no longer a rigid unit tipping. All the little elements are continuing to rotate internally, the little tiny things. That's why the whole thing doesn't look like it keeps rotating. Yeah, it doesn't. As a unit, it ceases to be a rigid body at that point. That's how it obeys the laws of physics. So it doesn't violate the laws of physics. It appears to, if you look at it, as a solid rigid body and it doesn't come apart. But we know it doesn't violate the laws of physics, which means it has turned to dust.
Yeah, if you threw a balloon full of flour and then you pop the balloon in mid-flight, it'd just stop flying.
Here's a mental model that I did. Get a balloon and fill it with water with red food coloring in it, and tie it off. Lots of red food coloring, and put it in a swimming pool. Right? If you poke that, if you pop it, you're going to have one leak that's going to pressurize. It's going to be squirting red water out into your swimming pool. Instead, get several boards with a whole bunch of nails poking out at it, or razor blades, and then you poke it from all different directions. So you poke the surface of the water balloon that's filled with red color. You poke it all over at the same time, so it doesn't have it. It loses pressure. So it's not going to squirt everywhere. The red blob kind of just stays. The red water just stays in there in the swimming pool in that region until the currents kind of move it around. You don't get the squirt, long distance squirt out there. So let's consider you're going to bust up the building, squash it to the ground. Well, all the air and stuff and ground up, parts of the building are going to have to escape out those windows. So they're going to have to squirt out of there mighty fast, like Mach 1, Mach 2. halfway to the ground, it would be having if it was a gravity collapse, it would be at Mach 1. It would have to exceed Mach 1 at about halfway down to the ground. By the time it hits the ground, it's the center stuff getting shot out is in excess of Mach 2. Mach 1 is 767 miles per hour. It's the speed of sound. And just a ballpark number changes, slightly depending on the temperature and all. But if you, in pressure and whatnot. But if you do have stuff squirting out of the buildings at any kind of speed at all adjacent buildings are going to look machine gun fired. That didn't happen. So that's another way of realizing if the building all turned to dust, you don't have to squirt it out anywhere. There's nothing holding the pressure in. It's just, it's tracks.
Yep.
Also, jet airplanes, they do this engine run up, do full throttle just to make sure that everything works before they take off. And it's kind of like they pop the parking brake and away the airplane starts, accelerating down the runway. They have to design runways to handle that. And one poor pilot of a Boeing 767 decided to do his run up on the tarmac. And he tore up the tarmac and it shot holes in the tail of his plane. It totally trashed the plane. Because it was pulling up pieces of the tarmac just from the air currents. It pulls up pieces of the tarmac and shot them through the tail of the plane. And you bet that wasn't exceeding Mach 1. So if you had stuff squirting out of that building at Mach 1, everything would be just all torn up. And that didn't happen.
No.
So that shows that the building was not a sealed unit that had to squirt stuff out of the way. You saw a few squirts coming down, and people were calling that those squibs. You should have seen a whole lot more squirts, and that was just regularly every 10 floors or so. Well, think of all the things in the building, like pressurized tanks that would have to let go. How many can you list? Different kinds of pressurized tanks that would be coming apart.
Well, we mentioned two last week. Me and Andrew, we mentioned water tanks and fire extinguishers.
Yeah, somebody might learn in civil engineering that, they can't pump water up. It's not, realistic to pump it up more than like 10 stories, and you put it in a holding tank, you pump it up another 10 stories, another holding tank. Because otherwise you'd have to pump it from the ground up to 110th floor. The head on that is so humongous, you'd drain out anything. You couldn't pump it directly. So they pump it in tanks. You have all these holding tanks going up the building. And someone who worked in the building said, they pump the water at night so, it wouldn't disturb people. They'd turn on the pumps at night and pump it up into the tanks. So that's one thing. Another thing is, one thing we do have eyewitness for, several eyewitnesses, at ground level. There's, you can say, well, those are bombs. No, that's the sound of an explosion. You don't see a bomb. You hear an explosion. That doesn't mean it's a bomb. And at ground level, there were firefighters who identified things that were exploding. How the firefighters you have to breathe air in a smoky environment. There's no air because the oxygen is displaced by the smoke. So they carry air tanks that have oxygen stuff in them, so they can breathe clean air in a smoky environment. Those tanks, they have plenty of tanks on ambulances, on fire trucks. They're exploding at ground level. Why would they do that? I'll read some of the first responder testimony. It's from my book. He's talking about an ambulance. That it must have had Scott bottles. Those are the air tanks. Scott bottles or oxygen bottles on it. They were going off. You would hear air go boom, and they were exploding. And then here's another one that is describing something. It says 50 of these things. Anyway, it says the Scott cylinders and the oxygen cylinders were all letting go. They were blowing up left and right. That was a different guy. Then of course we have this one that's been my favorite one because his descriptions are all so colorful. His boss asked him, "Well, did you lose your vehicle?" This is an EMT. "Did you lose your vehicle?" "Huh?" You lose your vehicle. He says, "Well, we're walking. I realized there were only two of us. I see my vehicle. The seats are covered. I've still got my bag. I hold it like a trophy, like people collect basketballs." Check this out. He says, I haven't touched whatever it was. The force was so strong it went inside the bag. So his instruments didn't look normal, it sounds like. Okay, then he says, but we were there. Vehicle 219 was destroyed. And his boss says, was it on fire? And he answers, what? And his boss says, well, was it on fire? He says, fire? We saw the sucker blow up. We heard a boom. Now, why would an ambulance explode? Why would oxygen tanks at street level sitting on fire trucks explode? There are pressure vessels. If you weaken the walls of a pressure vessel, at some point they're not going to be able to contain. Like let's get a balloon full of air, tie it off. It's a pressure vessel. Put it on a puddle of acid. The acid's going to start eating through the balloon, and pretty soon, as soon as it's too weak, it's going to explode because it can't hold in the pressure anymore.
Absolutely.
And
so
those are.
That's taking out the metal, dustifying the metal of the cylinder itself. So it's like it breaches inside pressure. Not
necessarily breaches. All it needs to do is weaken the wall to the point that it can no longer hold that pressure.
Yeah.
And the pressure will cause it to rupture. It's kind of like a balloon. If the outer nano layer of material goes, the balloon's too weak to hold the pressure in, and it'll pop. That example of getting a balloon, fill it with air, so it's pressurized, tie it off, and then set it on a puddle of acid or something that's going to eat it, maybe oil or something that's going to eat through the surface. As soon as it eats it enough to weaken it just enough that it can no longer hold in that pressure, it's going to explode. So if you have air tanks where the outer walls have been weakened from something, we don't need to say what it is, but from something, it's going to come to a point where they're going to explode. Or different materials like valves being affected. They also are describing that the tanks would go and then boom. So something was leaking before it exploded. Like maybe the thing just, came unripped. So here we have identified actual things that were witnessed as exploding, that were going boom. Yeah, I don't doubt there's sounds of explosions.
Yep.
Bombs go boom, but not everything that goes boom is a bomb.
Yep.
And if it was bombs going boom, bombs blow things into chunks, and the chunks go flying. The chunks don't turn into dust in mid-flight.
No.
Also, explosions are accompanied by high heat and flashes. You see a flash when it goes off, and there's, of course, my favorite clip of something that's missing. If you had nukes or if you had bombs going off, enough bombs to destroy 110-story buildings or 47-story buildings, there's something missing on 9/11. Here's what it is. Blinded by the light. That'll stick in your memory. With thermite is used to weld railroad tracks and other things, and it puts off blinding light. Where was that blinding light?
Well, it wasn't there.
Nukes,
it wasn't there. There was a few.
nukes.
There's a few strange fires, but they could
But
be
that's
anything.
not blinding. Yeah, it wasn't blinding light. It looked like fires, and it's it's tempting to call them fires, but then we're not going to look at what they really are because we're going to assume they're fires. That's what this is like a magic show. It's just you have to prove everything. When you go to court, you have to prove that the charging somebody with murder by gunshot. Okay, you have to prove that he held the gun in his hand, that there's evidence that on the palm of his hand that he'd shot a gun, that the bullet found in the victim matches the same kind of bullet that comes out of that gun, and all these details that absolutely connect him to the crime. So assuming, we know he owns a gun, so therefore he killed this guy. You can't do that. If you start looking, though, at the kind of evidence you would need to prosecute this in court, you start seeing what really happened, because you're no longer solving an assumed problem. And so there's an enormous amount of really, really strange things.
Well, just to talk about the strange fires, today I was watching videos on YouTube where people putting steel wool inside a microwave, and it appears that the wool's on fire. Well, it's steel. It's actually just nothing else in there but just winds of steel or whatever steel wool's made out of, and you can't burn that. It's like, but yeah.
Well, it does. It does. It doesn't burn like a piece of paper does, but if something is hot enough, it glows. And so if the microwave is affecting it in such a way that it's making it do that, it would appear to be glowing. But again, hot things glow, but not everything that glows is hot. Now, see if you can name something that glows that isn't hot. Like a firefly? Do you have those in England, fireflies?
No, we don't, but I'm surrounded with them in Thailand.
Ah, so you've seen them there. Okay. They glow, but they're not hot.
Well, the first time I saw them, I was so shocked. I ran and got my wife, and I said, "You've got to come and see this." And she just went, "Oh, flies," and just walked away like, oh, she's grown up with them, so, it's just...
Last year, we didn't see so many around here. It's like the bees that are going away, but this year the bees were coming back more, and fireflies were too. So it was a nice sight. Around dusk or just after dark, you see these, they kind of like a strobe. It's on and then off, as they're flying around.
Yep. The other example you use is the light bulbs.
Yep, a fluorescent light bulb and an incandescent light bulb. They both glow, but only one of them is really hot. Would you unscrew an incandescent bulb with your bare hands that had been on for a long time? Yeah, you'd burn your hands.
Absolutely.
But a fluorescent light you can take out while it's been on for a while. It might be warm, but it's not gonna, they're glowing for different reasons. And the fluorescent bulb has a kind of a plasma in it that gets excited, and that's where it puts out the light from there. Instead of from luminescence coming from, heat from the tungsten filament inside the incandescent bulb. So they're glowing for different reasons. So let's compare the two, a fluorescent light and incandescent light. One's hot, one's not. So everything that glows isn't necessarily hot. Yeah, hot things do glow, but not everything that glows is hot. Fireflies is a perfect example. There's a process going on there. Same with fluorescent light bulb. So you see this thing that looks like a fire. Well, any other day you just assume it's a fire, but because we're being real careful, like making sure we can find the fingerprints of the guy on the gun. You look at it and you went, wait a minute, the plastic isn't burning. You got this police car, it's just all toasted inside, but the lights on top, they're polycarbonate that start melting at like 100 degrees. They're not melted. How's that? It's a different.
You've got images of these on your website, haven't you?
Yep, it's even on the AHA page. You can find that.
I'll post a few of those in.
Yeah, that's, let's see, J is toasted cars. If you go there, figure 56, you see the plastic lights on top of the police car. And you see it's just nothing left inside that car. It's just totally toast. And it's just, some, rusted-fied metal, but the back tire is nice. And, the paint job in the back end is nice. Looks like it came off showroom floor. The trunk lid's open. Makes you wonder,
57.
Yeah, 56. You can see the lights.
Yeah, I'm going to put 57 in because it's got that shiny circle as well.
But let's do 56 first.
Okay.
Because 56, you see, look on the roof. If you had, if this is an oven inside and you're just having some rip-roaring fire in there, why are those plastic lights still intact? Some of them on the other side are toasted, but the ones right above the passenger side in the front seat, right above the roof there, they're not melted.
Absolutely.
And then now let's go to the other picture, 57.
Yep.
Let me first say something. The detractors say, "Oh, it was towed, so it doesn't matter what happened to it." There's some cars on FDR Drive that were not towed there, that were toasted, and we have eyewitnesses to them. I don't say a car got toasted where the photograph was taken unless I know that. But the day after 9/11, are they playing musical cars all over Manhattan? And why are people focusing on that? We have pictures of at least several hundred cars while they're toasting where they are. There's the toasted car park, and then also up and down West Broadway. Other ones we're not sure of, but these ones, I don't know where they're toasted, but look at what the weirdness is here. Yeah, so you see that circular spot. Fires, when they burn, you have black, white shades of gray. Totally burned, not burned at all, with a transition zone in between. You don't have something that's totally toasted and 1 nanometer over, it's pristine. How do you have that circular spot there? Toasted, not toasted. It's just, taking the evidence. But look at the nice tire back there. And it looks like they have, the fill cap for the gas tank is back there. It didn't explode, but you have this nice tire there, fully inflated. And what about the tire on the front end? You get nothing there. You just have the rim. No as ifs or buts about it. It's just gone. And there's other ones where the window frame is just flopped out. It isn't this one, but some other ones that are weird like that. So it's just, you see a pattern, and it isn't necessarily, it's, people can say, well, I've seen burnt cars. There's a difference. If you look at that other picture, which was it, 56?
Yep.
Look at that picture, and look at where the front windshield sits, the seating for the front windshield. You don't have a single scrap of glass left. Not even the seal. It's as though, somebody's sandblasted it for a paint job. It's really, other ones that are more clean looking this, but you don't have any scraps of glass there. That's weird.
Yep. There's plenty of cars with completely clean of the glass.
Yep. Burnt cars, from car fire, they generally have, pieces of something left in the corners. But it's just like something that removed all of the glass in the windshield and the side window.
I want you to just go through the justification, not the justification, sorry, the terminology.
Hang on, one more car, figure 59. That one 59. Really looks like it's been spray painted. Sandblasted for a new paint job. That seating for the, there's not even any dings in this one. Look, there's nothing left. You see
it's
it?
got clean windows as well. Yeah, I'm posting it into the chat room now. Its windows are completely clean.
The swamp toast picture.
Yep.
And that's from, I call it the swamp. That's, you can see why. It's 1 block north of where Building 7 had been. That's West Broadway. For like 4 blocks, every car is toasted in some manner or other all along there. Not completely toasted necessarily, but look at the car right behind this one. What happened to the engine compartment? We don't know, but it looks like something happened to it. And you got that toasted bus, but look above the toasted bus. Green leafy trees. If you have some rip-roaring fire there, why isn't it, burning the trees?
Absolutely.
These are subtle things, but the trick is, don't jump to an answer. Just take in the data, and the data will tell you what happened. Don't tell the data what it's supposed to show you. You look at what it's telling you.
I just want to completely shift gears for a minute and just talk about the thermite and the numerous names and the dates that have come out with these names, because to keep when you presented your information.
Do you have that list? Do you have that list that I gave that link to the page?
I know you did. I can't find it. So I'm hoping you could just point me at it again.
Let's see. It's if you go to my website, then you go to the Critics Corner.
Okay.
And then, or from the homepage, you can open Critics Corner. Whoops.
I got it.
And then from there, you'll see scientific or something. I think it's there. Let's see. I've probably got. I'm a little bit slower. Let's see. Oh, history. Here it is. History repeats. True science versus the official truth movement. Okay. I think it's that one. Yep. That's the one it is. It's near the top of that list.
Repeats. Got it.
Yeah. You got it? Okay. I'll put in a window just to.
Right. So, when you've presented your evidence, have you ever changed your evidence?
No, I start out general, like, okay, people, give me a hard time about the Greg Jenkins thing. I don't see anything in there that I need to retract.
Okay.
I was just starting to point out the evidence. They said, what kind of energy? What kind of energy? Oh, we haven't gotten there yet. We're just looking at the evidence.
In December 2005, they called it thermite.
Yep.
I'll let you carry on.
Oh, you go ahead. Go ahead.
Anyway, March 2006, liquid aluminium has a property that is silvery, rather like aluminium foil, at all temperatures in daylight conditions. Right, in 2006, it's thermite that can be purchased on eBay. In July 2006, it's super thermite. In August 2006, it's thermate. In January 2007, it's thermate plus something else. In June 2007, it's spray-on thermite. In July 2007, it was thermite and couldn't be because was missing some ingredients. So it was thermite.
It was thermite, because it was missing. They call it thermite analog.
Yep. In 2008, it was nano-enhanced thermite. In 2009, it was nanothermite. We can all agree that nanothermite was used. Yeah. And then in 2009 it became nanothermitic material. So the truth movement...
Yeah, it became nanothermitic material that they found because they didn't find thermite.
Yeah.
You know what the nanothermitic material is? Remember how, with my chocolate chip cookie story, the buildings turned to dust. Most of them turned to dust, so therefore you can find every constituent of the building in there. The building was made out of steel with aluminum cladding, the main structural element. Steel is the majority of it's iron. That with other doodads in it like chromium and things like that. So if you turn that to dust, if you take all the atoms apart, what are you going to have? You're going to have very small pieces of iron that in atmospheric conditions are going to instantly rust. You're going to have a whole bunch of rust, a whole bunch of iron oxide. And then the aluminum cladding turns to dust, you have aluminum powder and iron oxide. Those are ingredients of thermite. So you have thermitic material. It's small, so you have nanothermitic material. That's not nanothermite. I do not disagree with their finding. Remember, they're getting you to assume the wrong problem. I don't agree. Yep. I don't disagree with their quote, Bentham paper, they call it peer review, that nanothermitic material was found there. Yeah, aluminum powder and iron oxide. I agree. That was in the dust. If it wasn't, we'd have something more seriously wrong here. Because we saw the building turn to dust. So if you don't find the parts of the building in there.
When did you first come out with your evidence?
Well, from the beginning, but I wasn't being so loud about it. On day one, I was looking in the faculty conference room, like, you guys see what I'm seeing? And they looked at me like I was crazy. This isn't a collapse.
When was the first time you found someone who was actually looking at you like you wasn't crazy?
I didn't, you start talking about it, people look like you're crazy, so, you kind of talk about people here and there, but I thought the grown-ups were going to take care of it. I've got my job to do. They have their job to do, meaning like NIST or whatever. But it became clear that the grown-ups weren't going to take care of it. And somebody needed to. And if I wasn't going to do it, who else was? And still to this day, who else is there? And I couldn't have done it without, others around me helping, like, Andrew Johnson, Morgan Reynolds, Jerry Liebhart, Russ Gerst. But there's just a small handful of us. But if this hadn't been done, it still wouldn't, and people would say, well, it's official story or thermite, official story or thermite. They'd give you a false choice to funnel you into that, and you never could solve it that way. But in 2005,
I interject something there?
Yeah.
Very briefly, you mentioned those names, and something came to mind when you mentioned the names. We're not a movement. I don't think we've ever all met together in the same place at the same time.
Nope.
I don't think we've ever had a conference call, to work out a plan or anything like that. We've each done whatever it is we felt needed to be done, or, we've asked for help in doing something at a certain time in a certain way. We haven't gone out and sought to, set up a website and then put on all these questions, and I think, and all these these other sort of criticisms of other people. But what I think I was going to say at that point as well is if people who have listened to architects and engineers nonsense, and it is nonsense really, you can go and look at that critique, if you've been listening to this broadcast, this podcast, you can now go back through it, or having listened to it, go and look at their critique of Dr. Judy Wood's website and book and everything, and see. I'd like people for themselves, just in their own way. They don't have to write to us unless they really want to. Just look at their critique, the architects and engineers one, and see if they think it covers all the evidence that's been covered in this 2.5 hours that this has been laid out. In fact, it's almost 3 now, I think. You see if that criticism covers that evidence for yourself, and I think you'll be able to work out from that, if you've got truly an open mind and you've been listening to more than half of this, you should be able to get a handle on what those sorts of critiques do, and that includes, in fact, most of the critiques that have been put out there. The Greg Jenkins one that we've mentioned briefly that comes up, and there are probably 2 or 3 others that get thrown around fairly regularly. So yeah, just look at those things and consider what you've heard and see if the two marry up, or and who's basically should be able to work out who's telling the truth and who isn't. Quite
well, when were these groups formed?
Oh, various times. I mean,
they serve various usefulnesses, and then the planned demolition of them too. Because when I first started, energetically posting the evidence on my website, suddenly there's all this banging pots and pans noise over here. Oh, don't look there, look over here. And there's this, Morgan Reynolds and I resigned from Fetzer's group the Fetzer-Jones group, which was, they were co-leaders or whatever. Fetzer didn't organize, bring about the group. Dave Ray Griffin, I understand, put these two guys together to do this group. And they were co-chairman or something. Well, I don't know what their titles was. But Morgan Reynolds and I resigned in August 17th, 2006. Then, hey, now we're free to do some real damage. Nobody answered except but us. And that's when I put up that first big long series, and we put out this article, critique of Jones's work. Like, Jones doesn't talk about this, he doesn't talk about that, he doesn't talk. Well, let's go talk about it. We didn't just criticize Jones. We said he doesn't talk about this, and then we went and talked about it and started working on it. And as soon as that came out, that was creating too much attention, so that Fetzer and Jones had this fake divorce and throwing spit fight. So people were looking at the spit fight instead of at my website. And then it's Judy Wood's fault for destroying the truth movement because she put up this website. Well, I wasn't a member of his club, so what does it matter what I'm doing? And and so that was very effective that way. And that's also when Stephen Jones came up with saying I talk about ray beams from outer space and space bee names and things like that I've never talked about. If anything, I say, well, we can rule out laser beams from space because thermal energy was not the destructive mechanism. And a laser beam from space would be cooking the buildings. So it rules that out. But it is interesting, and here's more evidence of how effective that tactic was about banging pots and pans over here so you don't look at Dr. Wood's website. In beginning of February 2010, there's this big grand release of this Freedom of Information request from ABC News and never before seen pictures. Look at these pictures. Wow. Those were all the pictures that were on my website. People didn't realize they'd seen them for the past X number of years because they were deterred from looking at my website. And so they weren't never before seen pictures. And I've got pretty good evidence of this because I submitted them in my federal QTAM case in 2007. Also, the images on my website don't have the copyright whatever stamp that they put on those other ones that were on the ABC News. I have the raw images. I would spend hours and hours going around the internet looking for images, and if I find a batch, I download them and I note where I got them from. And I downloaded that batch and I have them, and I put them on my website so other people could see them. And so then there's this wonderful person, a lawyer, who saw what I had on my website and went, whoa, That's evidence that can go to court. And he figured out this. Maybe Andrew knows more of the details of this, but he figured out this brilliant way of this approach that in order to file a federal qui tam case, you have to be a whistleblower. And in my way, being a whistleblower was to file or submit a request for corrections to NIST, letting them know that their contractors messed up and they're committing fraud. So I notified a government agency of this fraud. I submitted that the 16th of March, 2007. And then that qualified me to file a federal qui tam case, a whistleblower case, because it qualified as a whistleblower. You have to be the first one to do it, and you have to show that there's fraud. Those are the basic things. And the courts had started misinterpreting it, saying, well, you have to prove premeditation, you have to prove that they had premeditation where they were standing and where the hour hand was on the clock, and the minute hand, the second hand, and and the nanosecond hand, to the point that nobody could ever win a case. And then Congress said, no, that's not what we meant of this law. This is what we meant. You have to, in order for the case to go forward, you have to show there's fraud, and you have to be the first one to blow the whistle on it. And they had restated that. This is right after the what would they call that in 2008, where the Enron thing and nobody wanted to see where the money was going, and they wanted to have some accountability. Is this big payout that went to the banks to hold them afloat or something like that? And so Congress restated their intention of that original law. It's not a new law. They restated. They call it the Fraud Enforcement Recovery Act, and that applied to my case. And so there's no way they could throw out the case saying that it was I need to show where the second hand was on the clock and whose cousin's uncle's brother did whatever and had what for breakfast. No, I just had to show that there was fraud and that I'm the first one to blow the whistle about this. Well, I had for my request for corrections to NIST, they admitted fraud in that letter. They said, "Oh, we didn't analyze the collapse." That's fraud.
So in your court case, there were no mention of any directed energy weapons, there were no mention of justification, there were no mention of toasted cars, it was just, you are lying, sort it out.
Yeah, here's why you're lying. Here's an example. Underwriters Lab was paid by our tax dollars, so you can't sue a government agency, but you can sue the contractors who are paid out of tax dollars. So here we had the Underwriters Lab was paid to make 2 half-scale mock-ups of a floor span and then 2 full-scale mock-ups. All right, they were cooking them, twice the temperature Fahrenheit for twice as long, and they still weren't failing to support load. So they had to call the test 4 out of 4 times. They could not get it to fail to support the load. Yet they signed off on a report saying that fire did it. That is fraud. And and Andrew helped, also come up with, these various issues. And each one of the contractors, there's a set of things, as well as conflict of interest. Applied Research Associates, they're directors and manufacturers of energy weapons, and I showed evidence of that. I even sent that to NIST, and NIST said, "Oh, we didn't know that." Oh, bingo. I've got verification that I was the first to notify them. So they know what they're looking at. Not only that, they have a grant with the U.S. government to know everything about any weapon of mass destruction that exists or is being developed anywhere. So not only do they know what technology it is, they know whose technology it is. And I wanted to see them put under oath. So, here they had the most number of employees on that contract of any of the second highest was SAIC, Science Applications International Corporation, which also delves into energy weapons, and they were also in charge of security at the site. I think beginning the next day, they're the ones in charge of that gate opening where the dirt truck pulled out. They could tell you where the dirt was going. And we wanted to get them under oath too. So there's a long list of these, things we had to, issues. There's plenty of issues going on, and clearly there was fraud. And the lower court judge dismissed it because, well, he wasn't going to hear a case about who shot JFK or what landed on the moon. And amongst other things, just a whole bunch of nonsense stuff. Sir, maybe you didn't read the case. Maybe take a look. Well, he didn't want to look at it, so it was appealed to the Court of Appeals, and that's when that Fraud Enforcement Recovery Act was in effect that said you couldn't use this other garbage to dismiss a case. So these judges, in their written decision, wrote, we're going to ignore this new Fraud Enforcement Recovery Act, and then just dismiss the case. So they were ignoring the law to dismiss the case.
Right.
And they said it openly, because there's only like 5 or 6 people on the planet that were aware of it, outside of that really would care. Andrew, me, lawyer Russ Gerst, Morgan Reynolds, there's a small group of us. And we couldn't advertise. Well, if you're involved in a case, you can't fight it in the court of public opinion. But we can't help if other people do. Trouble is, that was shut down, the Truth Movement. Anyone who talked about it was booted out of AE 9/11 Truth.
So oh, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, what happened with the UK forum? I tried to advertise the case on our UK 9/11 Truth forum, and we had a news segment, or news section, I should say, and I put a link to a press release that I wrote about the court case, and I sent that elsewhere as well. I sent it to, BBC and various other places. That was in late 2007, and the UK 9/11 Truth forum, Tony Gosling, who ran that forum, moved my post from a news section into a controversies section, as if it was like some controversial thing, when it wasn't. All the documentation had been laid out, and that court case had been in preparation since 2006, and so it had been well prepared. And
it was, that was my first priority. That's why my website was just a file cabinet storing stuff while I was working on it. And then after that, I worked on the book, because I wasn't going to do the book first. Getting that court case out there before it got too long.
And if people look at when the domain name for AE 9/11 was created, I don't know the exact date, but it
was the end of October 2006, which was after I put up my quote Star Wars beam weapons article. After Borg and I put up that other thing. But the first time their website was archived was 3.5 weeks after I submitted my request for corrections to NIST, and it was that's when they submitted their thermite-free RFC.
Yes. So that was. So you can see that this is more
damage control.
Banging up pots and pans. We just so happened to be around the same time as those filings were made and all the other research was being posted.
Actually, the day that I submitted my RFC to NIST, request for correction to NIST, in mid-March, Andrew prepared a press release. It went out there and it started, zipping around, and that was same day. Stephen Jones came up, I just got this whistleblower blueprints for the building. Now we can do something. Look, just making all this noise out of it, banging pots and pans. It was just floor plans.
Yeah. So, have you got the letter for the architects and engineers?
Oh, that was that thing that you're talking about. The
rules for joining.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that you mean the vetting procedures?
The vetting procedure. If you want to become a member of Architects and Engineers for Truth, there's a vetting procedure.
I can probably dig that out. I've got that somewhere.
I said it. I gave it to him yesterday.
You gave me it to do. Yeah, I thought you could just send me the link, so I could just read off the requirements.
I don't know where it is online, but
I can probably find it. But basically, just to summarise it, we'll post the link in the chat window. But if you look at the Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth vetting procedures, that was leaked by somebody who realised that the Architects and Engineers group wasn't really going anywhere, and so they wrote this book called Nano Management: The Destruction of a Truth Group, or something. I can't remember the exact title. I'll probably get this in a minute. Let's just see if this was Nano Management: The Disintegration of a non-profit corporation. And I've got
I've got it. Yeah, I've got it here.
It's on my Thermite 3
there it is.
Thermite 3 blog. Well, I'll put it in the chat.
I have
window.
it. Yeah, okay. I just gave it to you guys.
Yeah, okay.
I've got a link to it though. It's not a file; it's a link. So
okay.
That came from this book, which was called Nano Management, and it was available as a free PDF. I'll get the exact title again. It was Nano Management: The Disintegration of a Non-Profit Corporation (SC) by Michael Armenia. And within that book was this page. Let's see if it's still on Lulu. People
it's
can.
Page 273 or something like that. That's pretty far down there.
Yeah, I've pasted the link in the chat window on the
If you just want to read if you want to read things, you just read this page. Just read it out because this page is absolute dynamite.
Yeah. So I'll just get that back up again.
And so when people sign up for 8911 Truth, they they get put on a team to keep them busy to do something, and so one of the teams are the vetting teams to see if somebody's qualified to join their club, and this tells you reject. They apparently do background checks on people and check to see, do lots of web searches with the applicant's name, anything else.
This is Appendix C from the Architects and Engineers vetting procedures, and it says the primary source for information is the Internet. Brackets, if necessary, contacted personal references may be considered. Therefore, it is assumed that the vetter is competent in using the Internet for research, particularly with regard to using search engines and their respective advanced search criteria. I won't read all of that because it goes on a bit. And then it says use a general search, cross-reference search results to confirm identity, attempt to find at least one photograph. Google complete email address, username at domain.xyz, Google the username, Google phone number. 9/11 related to site search, search the JREF forum, search 9/11 blogger, search 9/11 meetup, it says. Refine searches using google.com. If not already found for items A and B to get above, refine Google searches to determine any correlation to questionable ideologies using combinations of username and a search term, as well as full name and a search term. Among the search terms to be considered are brackets, no planes, quotation marks, no planes, DEW, as in Jew, nukes, HARP, UFO, Judy Wood, Jews, Holocaust and Zionism. So if you look at this page, the only person named in the whole of human history is, funnily enough, Judy Wood. So isn't that strange? So anyone that found Judy Wood connected with any websites or whatever that this person that they were vetting was associated with should be considered for non-admission. And we've documented 4 cases of this, 3 or 4 cases where AE 9/11 members who had signed their petition and set up a profile had put some information or links about Judy Wood's research.
Like Building 4 is another one, yeah.
Right, and they'd either had their profile deleted completely, or they'd had their profile edited to take out links or references to Dr. Judy Wood. So we have proof that organisation was actively filtering out information about what you've been hearing over the last few hours.
And also...
Yet they claim to be a 9/11 Truth organisation. I mean, we could do a whole programme about AE 9/11. I mean, that much is clear.
They're not good. They are up to no good. Their entire mission statement is to suppress the truth. They're not after the truth. They've got too much money, too much influence, too much power. If they'd have got behind Dr. Judy Wood's court case, which wasn't about anything other than saying the government has lied, let's have a new investigation.
Not just the government lied. It was about the contractors on the news report, because we had a legal avenue because they defrauded the American taxpayers. They were paid for by taxpayer money. And
if they'd have got behind you, they would have got what they wanted.
Right. Let me emphasize this more. So I was showing where they had committed fraud. It was a case about fraud. And you know who these people were? Many members of the military-industrial complex. And none of them, with their bank of lawyers, could find anything wrong with the information I submitted. That's why they had to ignore the law to dismiss the case.
Yeah, and put up a mass propaganda against anything you were doing. So
now, if you had 100,000 people in the street, if the street outside that courtroom, they gave us an 8-minute, hearing, and if you had the street filled with, truthers demanding this case go forward, they would have had a hard time to sweep it under the carpet. But as it was, can you sort of blame them? Because I guarantee you, I don't guarantee it, but I think it's a good chance, 99.999%, if that case was sent forward, those lawyers would probably be dustified on the way home from work. It doesn't go anywhere.
The other thing that gets covered up in all of this, while we're getting onto these issues a little bit, is that it's the government this, the government that, the government lied, or the government, set up this story or whatever they say. But what was involved in the court case, and this is extremely important that people realise this, was action against private contractors that the government had employed. So it may well be, we could argue that the government was it's not quite true, we know that, but the government was being, in fact, you could even go as far as saying that they knew that the contractors weren't being totally honest.
But that's what they wanted. That's what I brought up to NIST, and NIST said, but it was specifically in the contract of ARA that they were not to tell us what happened.
Yeah. So we got even more information from that. So, there is some evidence that they were obviously working to the same goals, but you could also read it that certain people in the government weren't very happy about what was being done, and they were actually trying to, in a very sort of cryptic way, tell us that they knew, these contractors had the most power basically, and they were allowed to lie and carry out their agenda, which was to keep the technology, which is what this is all about, covered up. And that technology hasn't been developed by the government itself. It may have been developed by a consortium of contractors in black budget programs, but we don't know the details of. We don't know all the serial numbers of the technology and all that sort of stuff.
I've got a beautiful example, a parallel. See, if we had enough people who cared about this case, it could have gone forward.
Mm-hmm.
It had a lot better chance to go forward than if only 5 people know about it. 5 people know about it. Why do judges stick their necks out? But there's another similar whistleblower case, parallel, not similar, parallel case where the same whistleblower case law was used, and that'll blow you away. Lance Armstrong, who was doping in winning 7 Tour de France's. And then he retired, and the next year Floyd Landis won, and he got caught for doping. I think maybe Lance Armstrong saw they're developing a test to be able to test this stuff, but they knew he'd been having positive tests along the way, but made donations to make the test go away, or in other words, a lot of people knew that Lance Armstrong was doping, but they helped cover it up the whole way through. David Walsh from London, I forgot what newspaper he was with, was on his trail from the get-go, and Lance Armstrong sued the newspaper, and they settled out of court and they had to pay it off, but the newspaper was correct. They could stand behind it. Now, Greg LeMond, who won the Tour de France 3 times, he had a bike company, LeMond Bikes, and he said about Lance Armstrong, winning like he did, he said, well, it's either the best, the biggest comeback in the history of all sports, or the guy's cheating. That's a true statement. It's one or the other. He wasn't accusing him of cheating. He was saying it's the greatest comeback in the history of all sports, or he's cheating. And because I hear a keyboard. Can somebody mute their keyboard? Hello? Oh, Andrew, could you mute your keyboard? Anyway, so in the history of all sports, or is cheating. Well, based on that one statement, Greg LeMond's bike company was destroyed by Lance Armstrong. He had that kind of power. But then finally it became fashionable to file this case. And, that it was able to come out. Only, 13 years? And then it was fashionable, and Floyd Landis filed a federal key tam case, just like mine, because Lance Armstrong was paid by the U.S. Postal System. He was a contractor for the government. He was a private contractor. He was paid,
He's
and
new.
he committed fraud.
He's new. It's only his second show.
Hello?
What? Hello? And Lance Armstrong committed fraud, and it was the same law that was used, and that moved forward because it was fashionable.
My point is that if we had a chance, the 911 Truth Movement had a chance to get what they are asking for, and because of their lack of publicity and the lack of the cover-up...
Because they got conned.
Because they got conned by the charlatans that claim to be out for truth, your A&E groups and the groups that are just distractions away from what we should be looking at.
They were talked into trashing my work and not looking at it, so they wouldn't see the evidence.
Right.
They're taught into just believing the story and standing behind waving their flag for their football team instead of thinking. And if they'd gotten behind this, it would have moved forward. Now, I want to bring out one more thing, take this opportunity to put this out publicly, because people who've been around this for so long will now go, aha, and light bulbs will kick on. So I couldn't talk about this case as long as it was a live case. But as soon as it was denied, not dismissed, but it was denied, the Supreme Court doesn't have to hear a case unless they feel like it. Well, they didn't feel like it, and so they denied the case. That ended the case. You know what happened right after that? Richard Gage, Stephen Jones, Dave Ray Griffin, and so forth organized this nationwide press conference. Every city, people were supposed to rent a room at a hotel in case the press had any questions. Now that I was free to talk about it, no way I could get any word out. They had it locked down. In addition, remember, ABC never released pictures before. Those popped out then, so I didn't have the shock and awe of it. Those are the pictures in my case. Wasn't it an interesting coincidence of timing? And I've talked to somebody recently who was involved, and they said, they always wonder what that weird thing was about this press conference in every city, and people were supposed to rent a room at a hotel, in case the press wanted to talk to them. Now, anyone who's hearing this, now that you know why.
Have the architect and engineers group, well, I'm sure they have they threatened you ever, openly?
Oh, I don't exist. But see, I've been busy trying to solve the problem, not looking to the left and looking to the right. If you want unity, look for the truth. The truth is singular and the truth is unifying. If you're looking to the left and to the right and who to poke and stab and undermine, you're not looking at the truth. If everybody's looking at the truth, trying to figure out what happened, then they're moving forward. And so that's what I chose to do.
I'm talking about the Fetzer incident where you on the phone call, you say you threatened me.
Well, right, that was this is when I first made the connection with John Hutchison. Thou shalt not make such connections. He wrote a letter to me, or an email to me, telling me that he couldn't say, if I didn't stop talking about Hutchison, he couldn't save me for what was going to happen to me. And I took that to mean a death threat. But Andrew took it to mean he was going to destroy my reputation. It turns out Andrew was right. And that's what he's done ever since. He's spread all sorts of rumors, Judy Wood attacks this person, attacks that person. She talks about space beams. There's even recent stuff that saying that I was doing bomb threats. But see, he gets out of it legally by saying so-and-so believes that Judy's the one doing bomb threats. So, you can't, but it's forming the lie in somebody's mind. I like what Andrew reminded us all of. We're out to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Not misleading stories. That's a misleading story to say, oh, Don Fox believes that Judy Wood, threatened or put out these bombs. That's not evidence. That's just somebody believes this.
I came up with the court oath for trolls, as we call them, and the judge would say to them, or the clerk of the court, whoever would say, "Do you swear to tell some truth, some half truth, or anything but the truth?" And that's the oath that you would give somebody like Jim Fetzer or Stephen E. Jones in court, and then of course they would be able to say what they liked, which is what they do.
Yeah, and it's a federal crime to defraud the government. So now ask yourself why the thing that 8911 Truth submitted to NIST did not contain any evidence of thermite or molten metal, or they left that out of that. That's the whole platform. That's
their entire case is formed on this.
It's if they submitted that, they're defrauding the U.S. government, and that's a federal crime. It used to be even worse. It used to be considered treason with the Smith-Mundt Act, which it undid in the year 2012. But that's changed. But it was in effect at the time that submission was made. So you have to ask who's interested in the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth. And it isn't a thing about infighting. Infighting means you're on the same, have the same objective. If truth is your objective, it's not a problem. But that's another card that gets played. Oh, we got to all agree with the same thing so we can have unity. Well, then why is AE 9/11 Truth infighting with NIST? Why are they infighting with the official 9/11 story?
It's all about management. I mean,
yep, it's perception management.
Yeah, you showed me Jim Fetzer's. He's even reviewed your book, so he's read your book. Or he's got a copy of your book. Whether he's read it or not, I don't know. But he's certainly aware of your book, and it's all about trying to manage the people's perception of your work to either discredit it or stop people even willing to even entertain it as an idea.
I love what Professor Eric Larsen had said. Sentences he uses are sneaky sentences, and the words are sneaky helpers in the sentence. And you start looking at it, and it's got all of this underhanded undermining. Like, well, she's off to a good start, but she has some, problems. Like, for example, he claims I don't talk about tritium. Well, he's edited and changed it. Well, she minimizes it. And then, she doesn't talk about strontium, barium, and so forth. Didn't he pay attention to the conference he organized in 2007? Yeah, that's a long time ago. I've been covering that. But it's perception. He doesn't have to tell the truth. But he actually doesn't exactly explicitly lie. It's a half-truth that causes, just like a magician, it causes the person, the audience, to think he said something else.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to read the Urban Dictionary quote about Fetzering. I absolutely love this. I'm sort of just pulling it up now. Fetzering, go, search. Where's it gone? There it goes. Fetzering, noun, the act of making an unfounded or substantiated claim. Number 2, in philosophy, a method of debate or discussion based on the premise of I think, therefore I am. I think you're wrong, therefore you are. Number 3, the act of disagreeing by employing rancor name-calling, ad hominem attacks or strawman arguments. Etymology. Fetzering began in earnest in the late 1960s, being implemented by JFK conspiracy theorists and has since expanded its use into the 9/11 debate. Number 1, without evidence, your claim is simply Fetzering. Number 2, he should rely on his data instead of Fetzering. Absolute. Sums it up.
Yep.
Sums it up.
But it's so the ones who are good at it don't explicitly lie. They just tell misleading truths, and they leave the lies up to the perception of the assumption of the audience. Like a magician doesn't lie. That's why it wouldn't work very well if the magician lied to the people. He just causes them to make the wrong conclusion and to try to be solving the wrong problem. Creating something by half truths are lies.
You can create. I've done magic that I've never ever done. Like, if I'm in a pub or a bar or a restaurant and someone says, "Oh, you're a magician, fill my glass of wine," and I can say, "Right, well, I'm a magician and I can't fill a glass of wine. What's going on there?" So I would say something like this. I'd say, well, I once did that. Very thing. And then I went out for a cigarette, and then when I were out there, the waitress, I walked back in, and the waitress were getting a massive scorn from the owner of the restaurant. And I walked over and said, "What's happening?" And he said, "That guy over there's got a full drink and he ain't paid for it. And this waitress must have given me it." And I said, "Oh, no, that was me." So I don't do that magic trick anymore. Now, they go out and say, "That magician, he can fill glasses full of wine." Right? I've just told a story that is so convincing in their mind that they believe it to be true. And it's not true. So they spread a rumour around that I can make alcoholic drinks on request. You want lager? There it is. You want wine? There it is. And I convince them with the story that I've told that I've already done this and got a girl in trouble, so I'll never do it again. They tell the story that I've done it. I've done magic that I've never done. And it gets spread around that I can do it. And I've done this. This is bizarre. Yeah, so there you go. Magicians can actually do magic without doing magic. It's like David Icke, he says problem, reaction, solution. He's also got the no problem, reaction, solution. And that's very similar. That's like not doing a magic trick, but getting everyone to believe you have. Not even doing one, just talking about it.
Yeah, exactly. And
now, if I may interject with that people talk about bombs in the building, and there's somebody I noticed posted on your Facebook thread, and they said, couldn't it be both? In other words, we now agree. You know, we've looked at Dr. Wood's evidence and we now agree that, it's pretty sure that something like directed energy weapons were used. But couldn't it have been bombs and or thermite and or nukes as well? You know,
not quite wanting to let go of their belief.
Yeah, and I answer that. My answer to that is, well, if you think about it, the stories of bombs and nukes and so on have been just as good as actually putting bombs in the building that's, really doing it, if you see what I mean. That so many people have been sucked into it, just like you were saying with your glass, filling the wine glass story. You never actually did that. You just were able to weave a story, in the right circumstances, and people believed it. And it's exactly the same with the bombs in the building at the World Trade Center. I think it's exactly the same. I mean, it was sort of backed up a little bit by these exploding tanks, which we've got witness accounts of outside the building, if not inside as well.
Absolutely. So it's just a way of saying, well, actually, magicians do lie, but it's just a way of saying, I'm not going to do that trick because you don't want to look like a failure. So you do the trick anyway, but you don't, and it's just it's a clever ruse.
I'm
saying by telling the story, you don't actually do the trick. It's very sneaky.
I guess I'm on a roll here. Richard Gage saying, Judy Wood, he's learning how to say the S at the end. Says the reason why people have been conditioned to think my last name has 5 letters. But Judy Wood totally denies, this, totally denies that, and there's a page, I gave you the link for it. It's tinyurl.com/911liars, and on that page is a scan of scanned in thing of my table of contents for Chapter 7. There's also below that is a copy of the check Richard Gage used to purchase my book using AE 9/11 Truth funds. Now, in there, right in the table of contents, the sound of explosions is dealt with. Right in there, squibs, question mark, and that's dealt with. These various things are dealt with right there, and he purchased my book in the spring of 2011 with AE 9/11 Truth funds.
We have proof, really, that Richard Gage is a liar. I mean, there's no two ways to say it, and some people don't like.
Which page is that on? Sorry, can you just give me a URL again for that page?
I've already posted it on Facebook, Matthew, but it's tiny. It's it's the one with the contents page. I'll put it in again I'll put it in the chat window now. But it basically will give you an image of the contents page of the book. There is also an audio clip of Richard Gage. Saying that if Dr. Judy Wood is going to ignore all of that evidence, then she's practicing witchcraft. You know, so Richard Gage is describing the Where Did the Towers Go book as witchcraft. You know,
and he also says that she's just ignoring the evidence, and she doesn't talk about iron-rich microspheres. And then the host of this particular radio show says, well, what about the microspheres, iron-rich microspheres that are found in crop circles, in the soil around crop circles? And then Gage says, well, I don't know about that. So here he is ignoring the evidence that I presented in my book.
Yep. And he bought this book off Matthew, what was his name? Now.
Matthew Nouse.
Yeah, Matthew Nouse has, got quite a lot to thank him for, really, because he was kind of in a similar position to me. He'd got kind of wrapped into the 9/11 groups quite a powerful way, because he
had met me, but then in September 2006, when after that, when Jones and Fetzer were having their divorce, he went with Jones, and then was stuck in that up until spring of 2011.
Yeah, and he then began to realise. We did an interview together in 2011 with Ralph Winterode, and that's on my website. He began to kind of realise that he had been led up the garden path by Griffin, Jones, and Fetzer and others, Kevin Barrett, and he actually then later came out and pointed out this, that he admitted that this is what happened to him, and he just never realised. And somehow he read my book or downloaded it or something. And he sort of went, oh yeah, that's what I've been experiencing. And he came out, and then he gave us that copy of that check. He makes no secret of the fact that he got it.
He had organized the Midwest speaking tour for Richard Gage, and then in one of the legs between two lectures, Matthew Nouse was driving Richard Gage from point A to point B, and there's some other people in the car, and that's when Gage, as Matt tells the story, that's when Gage saw the book. And he goes, oh, can I buy this? Sure. And then he opens up the book and he's saying, oh, look, she says such as, ha, isn't that stupid? She says such as, ha, isn't that stupid? And Matt said at that moment, he thought, what on earth do we have here? And the other people in the car had the same expression on their face. That was an abrupt awakening at that moment.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know whether he'd read my book then or before then or after then, but it was obviously around the same time he realised that there was something seriously wrong when he had all this scientific evidence, and this guy wasn't even he was laughing it off. He wasn't sitting there saying, oh God, I've never seen that picture before. Wait a minute, that means I've got to really re-examine this. He wasn't having that reaction at all. And Gage has continued, and he's been on 30-date tours across Canada and the US, since 2011. He's done like 2 or 3 tours then. And there's a chap that we know who does a lot of sort of background digging, and he found the tax records for A911, which is a 501 organisation now. And
501c3. And that's another interesting thing, that being a 501c3 is not for profit. It's kind of like what churches are. And so he cannot lobby Congress. That's a political action committee. A not-for-profit cannot lobby Congress. So no intention from the beginning of ever doing anything.
No, how many members do they boast to have?
The membership thing, again, that's a bit nebulous, really, because what they claim as a member may be just somebody who's logged onto the website, put their username and password in,
and they never come back to the website.
Never come back to the website necessarily, or just filled in a profile, with some general information about their background, and they don't even have to be an architect or an engineer. I mean, I knew somebody who'd put themselves on there, and they worked at Argos as in the warehouse. They weren't actually an architect or an engineer. I mean, they might have had some architectural or engineering knowledge, but they certainly weren't a professional architect or engineer.
But what figure is it they throw out there?
It was 2,200 was what was thrown out last time.
That architects do not build buildings. They design the concept of the building. Like Frank Lloyd Wright or whatever. Even was it Yamaguchi or Yamamoto or something like that. Yamamoto, I think, that designed the towers. to be like trees blowing in the wind, that kind of structure. But they don't decide how much steel goes here, how many bolts go there, the strength of the building. They don't go through engineering school. They just, how do you feel in this space? How's this space used? What message is this building? That's an architecture thing. It's a form of artwork. And engineers, building engineers are who design the building. How much steel do you put in the concrete for rebars? And how much, what kind of bolts do you need to bolt the building together? Architects have no clue. That isn't what they do. So it doesn't matter if they're architects. And actually, there's this, Abe Rodriguez, who's now Dr. Rodriguez. He was a medical student at the time. He went to one of Richard Gage's talks because Gage, when he said, "Oh, Mr. Gage, have you seen this evidence on Dr. Judy Wood's site?" And they X'd him off the list and didn't tell him. And so he wanted to confront Gage about it, and he went to one of those speaking tour things. And afterwards, he went up to him and confronted him about the seismic data. And Richard Gage says, "Well, I don't know anything about the seismic data. I'm not a seismologist, and I don't know anything about it." But wait, he's an architect in San Francisco, waiting for the big one, right? And he doesn't know anything about seismographs. Interesting.
It is interesting. We're probably going to have to wrap this up very soon. Yeah. We've probably gone twice as long as we should have done. But before we do, I was really wanting to go through the Greg Jenkins facade, shall we say?
Oh, I'm kind of getting low on energy, but I'll just drop one hint in it. People are trained to think because this poor lighting and. You remember as kids you'd hold a flashlight under your chin at sleepovers, so you can tell ghost stories, look scary. Well, that's essentially what they did with me. And he was basically asking me, have you stopped beating your spouse yet? It's a lose-lose-lose answer. Either you're being evasive, which makes you look guilty, or saying yes means you used to beat your spouse. Saying no means you're still beating your spouse. So it's this game-playing thing. He wasn't interested in the facts. But the thing I was very tired at the time, but I'm very proud of myself on. I caught him every time he was trying to turn dustification into vaporization or something else. But what I learned from it was that he told me exactly what the most important things to cover up was. That the dust went up, that the building mostly turned to dust, and there wasn't a lot of rubble left over, and the dust was very, very fine. Don't look up. Absolutely no dust went up. That was his position. And it was very coarse. It was 1.3 millimeters in diameter. No. This dust got so fine, it was on the order of the size of DNA. 1/100th of the size of red blood cells. And as you inhale, it goes right into your bloodstream. That would make anybody sick. And he didn't want that to come out. So it was all these things he was trying to hide. But let's think about it. I was made to look like a fool for saying that most of the building turned to dust. Look how many years it's been since then that has remained covered up because of that ridicule. Because people bought into the ridicule.
I'd like to say, how did you end up being there?
Jim Fetzer said he was going to be presenting my work there. What's he doing presenting my work? See, I was innocent and naive back then, and he wanted me in the audience. I'm in South Carolina, and that's in Washington, D.C. That's like at least a 10-hour drive, and I have kitties that I have to put someplace, and I was going to stay at my parents' place and put them there. So there's a lot of stuff to do. Okay, but he really needed me to be there, and because to answer questions, is the case of questions. Well, okay, I got there just in the nick of time. I'd drive through the night and whatnot, and then
nearly didn't get there though.
Right? Yeah, I had a problem with my debit card. Walmart, screwed up my typing the number in, so they canceled my card. So I didn't have any money, and Fetzer was going to wire me the money. I should have accepted, but then that, what's she doing getting money from Fetzer? Because he desperately needed me to be there. And coming up, thought I was going to get there late, and he said, well, as long as you're there for the end of it. Well, I got there for the beginning of it, and I was sitting through it, and when he said some bogus stuff, I called him on it. I thought, that's what I was there for. Like when he was doing the Normanetta, 50 miles out, 30 miles out. I said, how fast can that young officer run? Plane going 600 miles an hour, that's 10 miles a minute. Between 50 and 30, that's 2 minutes. Is he running to and from the radar room and carrying on a conversation with Cheney in that amount of time? It's ridiculous. How did the plane get there? By bicycle? And then he was, shut up. And I was confused. And then at the end of the thing, this guy has a pad of paper and a pencil. He's kind of, a few questions. I said, well, I got to go to the bathroom. Well, you could ask him, I got to go to the bathroom. So I kept being insistent. I was on my way to the bathroom. Well, I came out and walked in this room. The lights are on, the camera's rolling. Am I going to get caught saying, oh, see how evasive she is? I'm stuck. That's how I felt, but he wanted me to sit down and answer these questions. Oh, okay. And I sit down to answer the questions. Before I sat down, I said, well, I want that seat instead, because I wanted the people in front of me instead of behind me. And, so they said, well, now we have to change all the lighting. I was too tired to say, why do you have to change the lighting? Notice they have a profile shot of me. My skin is purple. It's up close, I'm out of focus. And Jenkins, pretty boy, nice straight-on shot and, in focus and good skin color. Yeah, but that makes a big effect on people. And so afterwards, somebody actually recorded the thing, gave me a recording of it. There's no information that came out of it. Nothing I said wrong. He was trying like the Dickens to get me to speculate. And I'm not going to speculate. What kind of energy? Well, we haven't gotten there yet. Some type of.
And they switched
energy.
the picture.
Right. Well, yeah. I also switched the picture. That if I show you I'm talking with you about this picture of a cow. And then I posted online with a picture of a horse. I said, isn't that guy an idiot? He doesn't even see that's a horse. It was the equivalent of that. That, the picture's inserted at the beginning, at the end. And it wasn't exactly a lie. It was a misleading truth, which is a lie. He said that this was at the National Press Club after she gave a talk. I had given a talk there 4 months earlier. This was about Fetzer. He wasn't asking Fetzer any questions. And by the end, I was kind of having fun with him. About 2/3 of the way through, Jenkins was saying, well, all the rubble was there, and the building turned dust. I said, show it to me. In this picture you gave me. And he said, well, it's there. You don't see it. I said, no. And we kept going round. And finally, he had to fold his cards. I was kind of mopping the floor with him. He was, turned into a sweat and rubbing his head. And at that moment, Jim Fetzer burst into the room, rolls up his sleeve like he was going to punch out Greg Jenkins and save the damsel in distress. Only the damsel wasn't in distress. It was Greg Jenkins who was in distress. It didn't go according to script. The Fetzer had disappeared until about 2/3 of the way through, and he was going to look like, he came in to save the damsel in distress. And I was, saying, well, Jenkins, where's the building? It used to be up here in 2/3, or at least half it's gone. Where'd it go? Is it on the ground yet? Where'd it go? I don't know. He was really getting into a panic and getting into a sweat. And shortly after that, security guard came in and said that you guys are here illegally. You have to leave. So Jenkins didn't even have permission to be in that room. It was a room connect to a room. And the next day I called Fetzer and I said, why did you invite me up here? And he cursed me out and slammed the phone down.
Nice.
And it's somebody else, pointed out later in Jenkins's thesis for his PhD, in the acknowledgments, he's thanking NSA for sponsoring, at least some of his PhD work. NSA, that NSA? And he has a security clearance too. He also has a security clearance. So it was clear to me, my dust series, that was motivated by Jenkins. But then right after that, Stephen Jones emailed Greg Jenkins and invited him to submit a hit piece on me for his Journal of 9/11 Studies, and then hinted at him how to make it worse, how to insert this picture that it could be mistook this way, and make it seem like that's what Dr. Wood is talking about. That is as though this is the picture she's looking at. It's a totally different picture. And then Jenkins was so proud of himself, he spammed it out to all the people in DC 9/11 Truth Movement, in the Truth Organization. And one of those people forwarded it to me, forwarded it to Fetzer, Fetzer immediately forwarded it to Jones without taking the guy's name off of it, so they would know who the leak was. And then Jones then sent out an email saying, I retract that letter. Why? He's already out there. That email is on my website. It's what's interesting about it is to see how subtle it is to drop the hint without explicitly stating it. You know, when Stephen Jones directs you to that hit piece on the 8911 Truth site, well, when people ask me that question, I just direct them to this. You know, I give them that link.
Oh, absolutely.
But he makes it seem like, well, that's what I do. You can do what you want to do, and you know, like hint, hint. That's probably what you want to do. He doesn't tell them. He lets them own it. So sorry to get into that, but it's part of the, you know. I also
want you to get into it
too. I also went through, you know, you guys started out with thermite. I didn't have that problem to overcome. I had this other, like, you really want to think the best of somebody. And well, maybe Stephen Jones is having a senior moment. He just doesn't realize that, you know, high school physics, he forgot that, you know, aluminum glows at the same time as your iron glows. And so I wrote him this email saying, you know, Stephen, are you having a senior moment? I actually said that. And I sent him pictures, you know, I didn't know how to find pictures on the internet at that point, but I knew what the material was because it was in my lab. It was 99.97% aluminum. And I had it glowing, and I sent him the pictures. And my student had helped me take those pictures. And Stephen Jones's response was, well, maybe it glows in Clemson, South Carolina, but doesn't glow in Provo, Utah. You know, what can I do with that? I'm at the end of the road. Like, can a PhD educated nuclear physicist be this slow to figure it out? And I came to using that question. If you naturally find yourself asking that, you know what the answer is. You know, you want to give somebody a second chance and a third chance and a fourth chance and a fifth chance. And if you give them 200 second chances and you still give them another second chance, they're good.
This is no accident that this is no accident. This group is.
That was Jim Fetzer, by the way. I gave him 200 second chances, and I still was going to give him another second chance. You know there's something wrong with them, but you're still going to get, because, you know, our humanity is used against us. We want to see the best in people. We want to give them every benefit of every doubt.
Yeah, some people just don't deserve it. These people, they don't realize the world that they are stopping coming forward by suppressing knowledge that we could do something about. If the 911 Truth movement rallied behind you, could we go forward? Could we?
Oh yeah, but that's a different. You know, one thing it's getting later, so that it's too much junk out there. Oh, some say it's thermite, some say it's nukes, some say it's mini-nukes, some say it's radiation from outer space. So I guess we'll never know what really happened. Let's move on. Yeah. Nothing to see here.
The 911 are now not denying the justification, are they?
That's right. And that's taken them 7.5 years of ridiculing me for saying it.
Yeah, well,
hang on. I'd like to say this for the people listening out there, that if you see somebody posting that Greg Jenkins video, it now is to my benefit, because it shows I was right all along. And I was being ridiculed for saying the building turned to dust. Most of the building turned to dust. And Jenkins was saying all the rubble pile is there. It's this huge rubble pile. None of it turned to dust, or, you know, he was covering that up. I was ridiculed for saying that most of the building turned to dust.
Well, apparently the truth goes through three phases: ridicule, ridicule, mocking, or something, then acceptance. No, then self-evident, isn't it? Ridicule, acceptance, and self-evidence, or something like that. The phases of truth.
Well, as I think Gandhi said it, first they ignore you, then they fight you, then you win. But the other stage that somebody else refers to is then it's self-evident. It's like, well, everybody knows that. Or little Judy's talking about ray beams from outer space, and that's stupid. But see, we're right. We discovered it turned to dust. That is starting to kick in. Yep. Because they don't realize that I've been saying this all along. You can go to the government website, NIST, where they have posted my request for corrections from 2007. It's been up there all this time. You can go there and see. That's what they needed to control. They wanted you to, if you don't like the lie behind door number 1, we show you the lie behind door number 2. If you don't like that, we show you the lie behind door number 3. You know, nukes, mini-nukes, micro-nukes, thermite, super thermite. anything to keep you from turning around looking at the evidence that Dr. Wood is showing you. And
once you've seen it, you've seen it. There's no going back. Once you know the truth, there's no going, oh, I'm just going to forget the truth. No, you know it. That's it. There's no going back.
And the title of my book is another thing that if it says, oh, that's your theory. No. I show evidence. I show evidence of what happened on 9/11. What happened on 9/11, most of the building turned to dust in midair. That right there is proof that there exists a technology that can turn most of a building to dust in midair. The evidence of what happened is proof that a technology that can do what was done exists. Now,
you don't need to see the patent. You know it exists.
Yeah, you know it exists because I've very well documented what it does, and I don't want people to use the name because they use these trendy terms, HARP, bin Laden, whatever. Those are just names to focus on. Focus on the evidence, what it can do. Now, there's evidence of the technology existing, but think of what else we could do with that technology instead. Instead of using it to blow up the world, let's use it to provide free energy to the whole world. So the evidence of what happened on 9/11 is evidence that free energy technology exists. If people get out of their mindset, the brainwashing, and look at the picture on the cover of my book, the bubbler picture, once they realize what the evidence is showing them, and not, say, oh, collapse. If they realize this building's turning dust in midair, oh my gosh, everybody on the planet can know that free energy technology exists.
Absolutely. And that's what we've got to strive for that. Have you got any closing words? Because we're going to wrap it right up now.
Think your own thoughts. Know what it is that you know, and know that everything else you don't know, and don't fill in the gap with speculation and guesswork, because then you don't know what you have anymore. Okay. Speculation can give you encouragement where to go look, but you have to have evidence to know what it is that you know that you know that you know.
Yeah, I believe this world owes you a great thanks, but it needs an apology as well for the way it's treated you. It's absolutely horrendous. Any closing words, Andrew?
I think you've just got to make sure that you do due diligence with this stuff. And I encourage people, for example, to check us out, write to us and check into our backgrounds.
Read the book and then
say. Yeah, read my book, which is free. Does it stand up to your scrutiny? Have I said anything that's untrue? Have we said anything that's untrue tonight? Check it out. And you have to verify this. It's too important to take anybody else's word for it, because it's just too important. And all the personal attacks and all that sort of thing, they're kind of secondary to the building and developing your own understanding of what's actually happened and how it's been covered up. And once you've done that, you'll be in a much better state for tackling this horrendous I don't know what to call it, this horrendous new understanding that you have of what's happened in the world. So, you have to learn to live with that.
There you have it. Thanks for listening. You've been listening to Red Pill Raw Truth. See you next week.
Thank you so much, Dr. Woods.
Thanks.
Thank you, Andrew and Matthew. Second show, 4 hours. Dr. Judy Wood.
I forgot to go to break, mate. I'm sorry.
Swish. Swish. No net.
Are we still on?
I don't know.
Yes, we are. We're going to lead out with this, so mute up your mics.
Oh, wow.
There we go.
First rule of being a host.
Where did the towers go? Away with the breeze that blows. And how much steel did they find? Could it be shipped in time? I don't know, I haven't seen the receipt. to ask Judy Wood. Before you accuse someone, you better make damn sure you know what was done. Wake up, this is your alarm. Wake up. So while you're sitting on the fence, why don't you check the evidence? I'll tell you something that you'll learn. World Trade Center paper doesn't burn. And how could those buildings fall with a seismic impact so small? I know that something's wrong. 8 seconds, the North Tower's gone. I'd tell you if I could, but you need to ask Judy Wood. Before you accuse someone, you better make sure you know how it was done. Wake up, this is your alarm. Wake up, you know it was 2001. Here we are and we're still arguing. Wake up, this is your alarm. Wake up, this is your alarm. Wake up, wake up, wake up.
The towers didn't burn up, nor did they slam to the ground. They turned into dust in midair.